The scent of rosemary and roasted garlic drifted through the hallways of the old Victorian house. It was a smell that usually promised laughter, clinking wine glasses, and the heavy, satisfying scraping of forks against china. Rose stood in the center of her kitchen, wiping her hands on a floral apron that had seen better days. She was 64 years old, but today she felt older. Her joints ached with the damp weather, but she ignored them. Today was important. On the counter sat a prime rib roast, resting perfectly in its juices. It cost her a week's worth of groceries, but she didn't mind. Brad loved prime rib. He used to say it was the only thing that made coming home worth it. Next to the roast was a bowl of creamy potato salad with extra dill, just the way Cindy liked it. Rose checked the wall clock for the 10th time in as many minutes. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. They were supposed to be here at 5:30. She moved to the dining room. The large mahogany table was set for four, though only three would be eating. The fourth place setting was symbolic, a small ritual she kept for her late husband, Arthur. His framed photograph sat near the head of the table, his smile frozen in time, watching over an empty room. "They are just late, Arthur," Rose whispered to the photo, adjusting a napkin by a fraction of an inch. "You know how traffic is downtown." The house was silent. It was a large house, too large for one woman. It had 4 bedrooms, a sprawling garden, and a grand staircase that curved up to the second floor like a wooden spine. Once this house had been filled with the noise of running feet and shouting children. Now the silence was so heavy it felt like it had mass. It pressed against Rose's eardrums. The phone rang. The sound was so sudden that Rose jumped. She hurried to the wall-mounted landline in the kitchen, her heart doing a little flutter of hope. It had to be Brad. He was probably lost or stuck in a gridlock. "Hello?" Rose said, her voice breathless. "Brad, is that you?" "Hey, Mom." Brad's voice came through, but it wasn't the warm greeting she wanted. It was clipped, rushed, and backgrounded by the noise of a busy street. "Look, I can't make it tonight." Rose felt the smile slide off her face. She gripped the phone cord tight. "But, Brad, the roast is ready. It's your father's memorial dinner. You promised." I know," Brad sighed, a sound of impatience rather than regret. "But something came up. A huge investment opportunity. I'm meeting a guy right now. If I leave, I lose the deal. You want me to succeed, don't you?" "Of course I do," Rose stammered. "But can't you just come for an hour? We haven't seen each other in 3 months." "Mom, stop guilt-tripping me," Brad snapped. "I'm doing this for my future. For the family. Just put the food in the fridge. I'll swing by. Sometime next week." "Maybe." "Brad, please, I have to go. Bye." The line went dead. The drone of the dial tone buzzed in her ear like a persistent fly. Rose slowly hung up the phone. She stared at the prime rib. It was starting to cool. Before she could process the rejection, her cell phone on the counter lit up. It was a text message from Cindy. Rose picked it up, squinting at the bright screen. "So sorry, Mom. Emergency content shoot. Client moved the schedule up. Can't miss this exposure. Love you. Eat without me. XOXO." Rose stared at the emojis. A heart, a crying face, and a kiss. They felt like a mockery. Cindy wasn't coming either. An emergency content shoot was more important than the 10-year anniversary of her father's death. More important than the mother who had spent 6 hours cooking. Rose set the phone down. She didn't reply. What was there to say? She walked back into the dining room. The candles she had lit were burning down, dripping wax onto the pristine tablecloth. The empty chairs seemed to stare back at her. The silence returned, but this time it was colder. It wasn't just quiet, it was lonely. She sat down at her usual spot. She looked at Arthur's photo. Well, she said, her voice trembling slightly. It looks like it's just you and me again, old man. She served herself a slice of meat and a spoonful of potatoes. She tried to eat. She really tried. But the food tasted like ash. It was dry in her throat. She took one bite, then put the fork down. The tears didn't come immediately. Instead, a deep, hollow ache settled in her chest. It was the realization that she was an obligation to them, a calendar event they could reschedule or cancel without a second thought. She wasn't a priority, she was an afterthought. I tried, Arthur, she whispered. I gave them everything. The college funds, the down payments, my time. Why isn't it enough? Arthur didn't answer. The house creaked, settling into the evening chill. Rose couldn't stand the sight of the food anymore. Ani, it felt wasteful and pathetic. She stood up abruptly, grabbing the plates. She needed to clean. Cleaning was good. Cleaning was action. If she kept moving, she wouldn't have to think about how empty her life had become. She carried the heavy platter of meat back to the kitchen. Her hands were shaking. She wrapped the food in foil, moving with frantic energy. Fridge open, food in, fridge closed, dishes in the sink, water running. She scrubbed the plates harder than necessary. The hot water turned her skin pink, but she didn't feel the heat. She only felt the cold knot in her stomach. After the kitchen was spotless, she decided to take the tablecloth upstairs to the laundry chute. She needed everything to be perfect again. If the house was perfect, maybe the family would come back. It was a child's logic, but it was all she had. She gathered the heavy linen tablecloth in her arms. It bunched up, blocking her view of her feet. She walked toward the grand staircase. The stairs were polished wood, slippery if you weren't careful. Rose knew this house like the back of her hand. She had walked these stairs thousands of times. But tonight, her eyes were blurry with unshed tears, and her mind was miles away, replaying Brad's impatient tone. She took the first step down from the landing. Her slipper caught on the edge of the thick linen fabric she was carrying. It happened in slow motion. Rose felt her balance shift. She tried to correct it, tried to grab the banister, but her hands were full of the tablecloth. She clutched the fabric instead of the wood. Oh no, she gasped. Her feet went out from under her. Gravity took over. She fell forward, plunging into the void of the stairwell. Her body struck the hard wooden steps with a sickening thud. She tumbled, rolling over her shoulder, her hip smashing against the sharp edge of a stair, her leg twisting at an unnatural angle. The world spun in a violent blur of ceiling, wood, and darkness. She came to a stop at the bottom landing, crumpled in a heap. The tablecloth had unspooled around her, like a shroud. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then the pain arrived. It wasn't a dull ache. It was a screaming white-hot fire that exploded in her right hip and shot down her leg. Rose opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out, only a ragged, breathless gasp. The wind had been knocked out of her. She lay there, staring at the ceiling chandelier. It swayed slightly. "Help!" she whispered. Ideally, she would have shouted, but her voice was a broken croak. She tried to move. She tried to push herself up. A bolt of agony ripped through her body, so intense that black spots danced in her vision. Her right leg wouldn't listen to her. It felt heavy, like it belonged to someone else, yet it burned as if it were on fire. "Calm down, Rose. Calm down," she told herself, panting. "Phone. Need the phone." She remembered leaving her cell phone on the kitchen counter. That was at the top of the stairs, around the corner. The landline was in the kitchen too. She looked around. The hallway was empty. The front door was 20 feet away, locked. "Brad!" she yelled, hoping against hope that he had changed his mind, that he was walking up the driveway right now. "Cindy!" Her voice echoed in the empty foyer and died away. Nobody was coming. She tried to drag herself. She dug her fingernails into the rug. She pulled. The movement caused the broken bones in her hip to grind together. Rose cried out, a high-pitched sound of pure animal distress. Tears finally spilled over, hot and fast, mixing with the cold sweat on her face. She couldn't move. She was trapped in her own home. She looked at the grandfather clock in the hallway. It was 7:30. They might call back, she thought. When I don't answer, they'll worry. They'll come check on me. She clung to that thought. It was the only thing keeping the panic at bay. Brad would realize he was harsh. Cindy would finish her shoot and feel guilty. They would call. And when she didn't pick up, they would drive over. They had keys. Time began to stretch. 8 o'clock passed. The house grew darker as the sun fully set. The streetlights outside cast long skeletal shadows through the windows. 9 o'clock. Rose was shivering. The floor was cold, leaching the warmth from her body. Her hip throbbed with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Every beat was a hammer blow. 10 o'clock. Her throat was parched. She stared at the phone on the small table in the living room, visible through the archway, but impossibly far away. Just 20 feet. It might as well have been 20 miles. Midnight. The pain had dulled into a sickening nausea. She drifted in and out of consciousness. In her delirium, she heard footsteps. "Brad?" she murmured, lifting her head weakly. But it was just the house settling, a pipe clanking in the walls. Why hadn't they called? Did they not wonder if she was angry? Did they not care if she had eaten? The realization hit her harder than the fall had. They weren't calling because they didn't think about her. Once they had hung up the phone, she had ceased to exist in their world. She was a task they had successfully avoided. Brad was likely drinking with his investor. Cindy was likely editing photos, counting likes. Rose lay on the floor, her cheek pressed against the cold hardwood. She felt small. She felt discarded. "Arthur," she wept softly, "I'm so scared. Please help me." But ghosts don't make phone calls. The hours dragged on, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The cold was the worst part. It seeped into her bones. Her fingers were numb. She stopped trying to move. She stopped yelling. She just lay there, watching the dust motes dance in the moonlight, waiting for morning, or for the end. She wasn't sure which one she wanted more. Dawn broke slowly. The grey light filtered through the fanlight window above the door. Rose was awake, but barely. Her lips were cracked. Her body was a rigid knot of pain. At 10 o'clock in the morning, 16 hours after she fell, she heard a sound. The metallic clatter of the mail slot opening. Clack, clack. A bundle of envelopes fell onto the floor just a few feet from her head. Rose rallied every ounce of strength she had left. She couldn't shout. Her throat was too dry. She banged her hand against the floor. Once? Twice? "Help!" she rasped. Outside on the porch, the mail carrier paused. He was a regular, a man named Tom who always waved when he saw her gardening. He had ears sharp enough to hear the thump. "Mrs. Sterling?" Tom's voice came through the door, muffled. "Is that you?" "Help me," Rose managed to say, louder this time. "I'm coming in," Tom shouted. She heard the sound of him trying the knob. Locked. Then a shoulder slamming against the wood. Once, twice, the door frame splintered and the door flew open. Light flooded the hallway, blinding her. Tom stood there, his silhouette framed by the bright morning sun. He looked down and saw her, a small, broken figure tangled in a tablecloth, lying at the foot of the grand stairs. "Oh my God!" Tom breathed, rushing to her side. He knelt down, his face pale with shock. "Mrs. Sterling, don't move. I'm calling 911. He pulled out his radio, his hands shaking. Rose looked up at him. A stranger. The mailman? He was here. He was holding her hand. He was looking at her with more concern in his eyes than her own children had shown in a decade. My kids, Rose whispered, her voice cracking. Did they call? Tom looked confused. He squeezed her hand gently. Save your strength, ma'am. The ambulance is on the way. He didn't answer the question, but Rose knew the answer. No, they hadn't called. As the distant siren of the ambulance began to wail, getting louder and closer, Rose closed her eyes. The physical pain was excruciating, but the pain in her heart was a cold, heavy stone that would not dissolve. She was going to the hospital, and she knew with a terrifying certainty that she would be going alone. The world came back in white. White ceiling tiles, white sheets, white noise. Rose blinked, her eyelids feeling like sandpaper. The smell hit her first, that unmistakable, sharp cocktail of bleach, rubbing alcohol, and stale cafeteria coffee. It was the smell of sickness. It was the smell of helplessness. She tried to sit up, but a heavy anchor pulled her back down. Her right leg was encased in a thick plaster cast elevated on a sling. A dull, throbbing ache pulsed in her hip, a reminder of the violence of gravity. Mrs. Sterling, can you hear me? A face swam into view. A doctor. Young, tired eyes, a clipboard tucked under his arm. Dr. Evans. Where? Rose croaked. Her tongue felt swollen. You're at St. Jude's Hospital, Dr. Evans said gently. He checked the monitor beeping rhythmically beside her bed. You had a nasty fall, Rose. A comminuted fracture of the right femur and a hairline fracture in your hip socket. We had to operate immediately to set the bone with pins. Operate. Pins. The words floated in the air like dust motes. She had been cut open while she slept. Who? Rose looked around the room. It was a semi-private room. The curtain to her left was drawn. There was an empty chair beside her bed. Just one plastic orange chair. Empty. Who is here? She asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Evans looked at his clipboard, then back at her. A flicker of pity crossed his face. He quickly masked it with professional detachment. The mailman, Mr. Miller, brought you in. He waited until you were out of surgery, but he had to finish his route. He left a note. He pointed to the bedside table. A crumpled piece of paper lay there. And my children? Rose asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and desperate. Did you call them? Their numbers are in my phone, under favorites. We tried, Rose, the doctor said, shifting his weight. We left voicemails for a Brad and a Cindy. We haven't heard back yet. It's been about 4 hours since you came out of recovery. 4 hours, plus the surgery time, plus the 16 hours on the floor. Nearly a full day had passed since she fell. They must be busy, Rose said quickly, instinctively defending them. It was a reflex honed over years of making excuses for their absence. Brad runs a big company. Cindy is... she's a public figure. They can't just drop everything. Dr. Evans nodded, but his eyes didn't believe her. Of course. Well, the nurse will be in shortly to check your vitals. You need to rest. Recovery from a hip surgery at your age. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. He left. The door clicked shut. Rose lay in the silence. The monitor beeped. Beep, beep, beep. It was the only conversation partner she had. She looked at the phone on the bedside table. It was an old landline unit provided by the hospital, but her cell phone was there too, plugged into a charger by some kind soul. She reached for it. Her hand shook. She dialed Brad first. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. This is Brad Sterling. Leave a message. Rose hung up. She took a deep breath, fighting the rising tide of panic. She dialed again. This time she let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then she hung up and dialed a 3rd time. The unwritten rule of emergencies. If you call 3 times in a row, they know it's serious. On the fourth attempt, he picked up. Mom, Jesus! Brad's voice was a hiss of irritation. I told you I'm in the middle of a crisis. Why are you blowing up my phone? Brad? Rose whispered. Hearing his voice made the tears well up instantly. Brad, I'm in the hospital. There was a pause on the other end, a short silence, then a sigh. Not a gasp of fear, a sigh. What happened? Is it your blood pressure again? I fell, she said, her voice small. I fell down the stairs. I broke my leg and my hip. I had surgery, Brad. They put pins in me. Okay, Brad said. The tone was analytical, detached. Okay, but you're alive, right? The surgery is over? Yes, but so you're fine. I mean, you're safe. Look, Mom, that sounds painful, and I'm sorry, really. But I can't come right now. I'm in a meeting with the bank. If I don't fix this liquidity issue by Friday, I'm dead in the water. You understand, right? I'm all alone here, Brad, Rose pleaded. She hated herself for begging, but the fear was stronger than her pride. I just need to see a familiar face, just for 10 minutes. I can't drive 2 hours just to hold your hand for 10 minutes, Mom. That's illogical, Brad snapped. You have doctors? You have nurses? That's what insurance is for. I'll send you flowers, okay? The big ones. I'll call you when this deal closes. Brad, please, I have to go. The VP is waving at me. Get well soon. Click. Rose stared at the phone. Illogical. Her pain was illogical. Her need for her son was an inconvenience to his liquidity issue. She swallowed the lump in her throat. It tasted like bile. She dialed Cindy. Cindy was softer. Cindy was a mother herself. She would understand the terror of being hurt and alone. Hi, Mom. Cindy answered on the first ring, her voice chirpy and loud. There was music in the background. I saw you called. I'm live streaming in like 5 minutes. What's up? Cindy, honey, Rose said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm at St. Jude's. I had a bad accident. Oh my God, no, Cindy gasped. It sounded dramatic, theatrical. What happened? Are you okay? I broke my hip. It's it's bad, Cindy. I can't move. I'm scared. That is terrible, Cindy said. Oh, poor mommy. That is just awful. Do you want me to post about it? Everyone will send prayers. We can start a hashtag. Hashtag pray for Rose. I don't want a hashtag, Cindy. I want you, Rose said. Can you come? Please, bring the twins. I miss them. Come there? Cindy's tone shifted. It became guarded. To the hospital? Yes. Mom, you know how I feel about hospitals, Cindy whined. They smell like death, and they are full of germs. I can't bring the boys there. What if they catch a superbug? And honestly, seeing you in a hospital gown, it would just traumatize me. I'm an empath, Mom. I feel things too deeply. I'd be a wreck. Rose closed her eyes. I'm the one in the bed, Cindy. I know, and I'm sending you so much love right now. Literally so much healing energy, Cindy said. But I can't come physically. I have a brand deal with that skincare line tomorrow. And if I get sick, I lose the contract. You want me to be successful, don't you? The same question. You want me to succeed, don't you? As if her suffering was the necessary fuel for their success. I just wanted my daughter, Rose whispered. Don't be like that, Cindy said, her voice hardening. Don't make this about you being a victim. You're strong. You're a survivor, you got this. I'll FaceTime you later, okay? When my makeup is done. Love you. Click. The silence that followed was deafening. Rose lowered the phone. She placed it on the bedside table, face down. She didn't want to look at the screen. She didn't want to see their faces in her contact list. A nurse bustled in. She was a middle-aged woman with a kind, no-nonsense face. Nurse Betty. She checked the IV drip. How are we doing, hun? Betty asked. Did you reach your family? Are they on their way? Rose looked at the nurse. She opened her mouth to tell the truth. My son is too busy with money. My daughter is too afraid of germs. But the words wouldn't come out. The shame was too great. Admitting that her children didn't care felt like admitting she had failed as a mother. If she had raised them right, they would be here. This was her fault. It had to be. They they are stuck in traffic, Rose lied. Her voice was brittle. Coming from out of town. It's a mess on the highway. Maybe tomorrow. Nurse Betty paused. She looked at Rose with a knowing softness. She had worked in this ward for 20 years. She knew the traffic excuse. She patted Rose's hand. Well, we'll take good care of you until they get here, Betty said softly. Do you need anything for the pain? No, Rose said. The pain is manageable. The physical pain was manageable. The other pain was not. Evening came. The hospital shifted gears. The bright overhead lights dimmed, replaced by the soft glow of reading lamps. The noise of carts and announcements faded, replaced by the hushed murmurs of visitors. That was when the torture truly began. Visiting hours. From behind the curtain of the next bed, voices drifted over. Grandma, look what I drew. A child's voice squealed. Shh, gently, Tyler. Grandma is sore. A woman's voice said soothingly. It's beautiful, sweetheart. An older woman's voice cracked with happiness. Did you draw this for me? Yeah, it's you kicking a ninja. Laughter. Genuine, warm, bubbling laughter. Rose lay frozen in her bed. She stared at the blank white wall to her right. She could hear the rustle of gift bags. The smell of fresh lilies wafted over the curtain divider. Mom, we brought you that soup you like, a man's voice said. Terry made it from scratch, and Dad is parking the car. He'll be up in a second. You shouldn't have gone to the trouble, the roommate said. Don't be silly. Your mom. We'd go to the moon for you. Your mom. We'd go to the moon for you. The words sliced through Rose like a scalpel. She pulled the thin hospital blanket up to her chin. She bit her lips so hard she tasted copper. Why? The question circled in her mind. Why was she different? She had driven Brad to every soccer practice at 5 a.m. She had paid for Cindy's modeling classes when they couldn't afford it. She had nursed them through chicken pox, flu, and broken hearts. She had sat by their bedsides for nights on end. She had given them her youth. She had given them her savings. And now she had a broken hip and an empty chair. Mrs. Sterling? It was a new voice, soft, accented. Rose wiped her eyes quickly on the pillowcase before turning her head. Standing at the foot of her bed was a young nurse. She wasn't Nurse Betty. She was younger, with dark, compassionate eyes and hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read Elena. I'm the night nurse, Elena said. Her voice was like calm water. I just came to check your vitals before you sleep. Elena moved efficiently, wrapping the blood pressure cuff around Rose's arm. She noticed the wet patch on the pillow. She noticed the untouched dinner tray. She noticed the empty chair. She didn't ask, where is your family? She didn't ask, why are you crying? Instead, Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, foil-wrapped chocolate. She placed it on the bedside table next to the silent phone. Hospital food is terrible, Elena whispered, a conspiratorial smile touching her lips. This is from my stash, hazelnut. It helps. Rose looked at the chocolate. Then she looked at Elena. Thank you, Rose whispered. My shift ends at 7 a.m., Elena said. If you need anything at all, you press that button. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. and you just want to tell me the ceiling is boring. You call me, okay? Okay. Elena adjusted the blanket, tucking it in around Rose's cold feet. It was a small gesture, something a mother would do for a child. Try to sleep, Rose, Elena said softly, using her first name. Tomorrow is a new day. Elena walked away, her rubber-soled shoe silent on the linoleum. Rose reached out and took the chocolate. Her fingers unwrapped the foil. She put the small piece of candy in her mouth. The sweetness bloomed on her tongue, masking the bitter taste of bile and antiseptic. She turned her head to look out the window. The city lights were blurring in the distance. Somewhere out there, Brad was drinking expensive scotch. Somewhere out there, Cindy was taking selfies. Rose closed her eyes. The tears finally fell freely, hot tracks running into her ears. She realized then that the fall down the stairs hadn't been the accident. The accident was thinking she mattered to them. The fall was just the wake up call. And as she drifted into a drug induced sleep, a seed of something hard and cold began to form in her chest. It wasn't hate. Not yet. It was the absence of hope. And in that empty space, something else would eventually have to grow. 2 weeks bled into 4. 4 weeks stretched into 8. Time in a hospital is not measured in hours or minutes. It is measured in shift changes. It is measured in the rhythmic squeak of rubber shoes on linoleum, the rattle of the meal cart at 5 o'clock p.m., and the hum of the floor polisher at midnight. For Rose, time was measured in the silence of her phone. The bouquet of lilies at the bedside of the woman next to her turned brown and died. Her roommate was discharged, wheeled out by a cheering son. A new roommate arrived, a teenager with a broken ankle. Her friends crowded the room, laughing, signing her cast with neon markers, leaving behind the scent of bubblegum and youth. Rose watched it all from her island of isolation. She stopped checking her phone every time it buzzed. It was usually just a notification from a weather app or a spam email. She stopped telling the nurses that her children were stuck in traffic. The lie had become too heavy to carry, and everyone knew the truth anyway. She was the lady in bed 4B, the one with the nice manners and the invisible family. But she wasn't entirely alone. The nights belonged to Elena. It was a rainy Tuesday, 6 weeks into her stay. The thunder rattled the hospital windows. Rose was awake, staring at the ceiling, her hip aching with the drop in barometric pressure. Elena slipped into the room, a flashlight clipped to her scrubs. She saw Rose's open eyes. Pain? Elena whispered. Memories, Rose whispered back. Elena nodded. She didn't offer a platitude. Instead, she pulled the visitor's chair, the one that had gathered dust for 40 days, closer to the bed. She set down 2 steaming cups of tea. Chamomile. I have a break, Elena said softly. Drink. It helps. Rose took the cup. The warmth seeped into her cold fingers. You work too hard, Elena. You take double shifts 3 times a week. Elena shrugged, a small, tired smile playing on her lips. I have to. My tuition for the nurse practitioner program is due next month. And my mother back in the Philippines, she needs surgery for her eyes, cataracts. If I don't send the money, she goes blind. Rose looked at this young woman. She was 26, the same age as Cindy's assistant. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes that even the dim light couldn't hide. Yet, here she was, pouring tea for a stranger instead of sleeping in the break room. How much? Rose asked. Too much. Elena laughed dryly. But I will manage. I always manage. We are women, Rose. We are made of steel, even when we look like glass. We are made of steel. Rose looked at her own hands. They looked frail, spotted with age. She didn't feel like steel. She felt like discarded paper. My son, Rose said suddenly, the words stumbling out. He just bought a new Porsche. I saw it on his Facebook. He posted it yesterday. New toy, he called it. Elena didn't say anything. She just reached out and took Rose's hand. Her grip was firm, grounding. He has a Porsche, Rose continued, her voice trembling. But he can't afford a tank of gas to come to see his mother. It is not about the gas, Rose, Elena said gently. Some people, their hearts are small. They are like thimbles. You can pour an ocean of love into them, and it just spills over. It is not the ocean's fault. It is the thimble's fault. Rose squeezed Elena's hand back. Tears pricked her eyes, but they weren't the sad, hopeless tears of the first night. They were tears of clarity. You're a good daughter, Elena, Rose whispered. Your mother is lucky. I'm just doing what is right, Elena said, checking her watch. Duty is not a burden, Rose. It is love in action. Love in action. That phrase stayed with Rose long after Elena went back to her rounds. Brad and Cindy had plenty of words. Love you, miss you, but they had no action. The next morning, Rose made a decision. She asked for her iPad. She didn't open Facebook. She didn't open Instagram to look at Cindy's latest brunch photos. She opened her email and found a contact she hadn't used in 5 years. James Henderson, attorney at law, Arthur's old friend, the man who handled the estate. He came 2 days later. He was a grey-haired man in a rumpled suit who smelled of old paper and pipe tobacco. He sat in the chair Elna had used. Rose, James said, looking concerned. You look thin. I'm shedding weight, James, Rose said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Dead weight. She handed him a notepad. On it, she had written a list of instructions. I need you to prepare a power of attorney, she said. But not for Brad. And not for Cindy. James raised an eyebrow. Usually the eldest son. No. Rose cut him off. Her eyes were hard. If I go into a coma tomorrow, Brad would pull the plug to save on the hospital bill. I want to appoint a professional proxy. And James, I want to sell the house. James dropped his pen. The Victorian, Arthur's pride and joy. Rose, that house is your legacy. It's worth nearly $2 million in today's market. It's a house, James. It's wood and brick. It's not a home anymore. It's a mausoleum. Rose leaned forward, wincing as her hip protested. I want to sell it. Quietly. I don't want a for sale sign on the lawn. I don't want it listed on Zillow where Cindy can see it. Find a private buyer, an investor. And the proceeds? James asked, his pen hovering over the paper. Do you want to set up a trust for the children? Rose looked out the window. She saw a bird flying against the wind, struggling but moving forward. No, she said. Put it in a high-yield account under my name only. I'm going to use it every cent. James studied her face for a long moment. He saw the pain etched in the lines around her mouth, but he also saw the fire in her eyes. He nodded slowly. Understood. I'll draft the papers. One more thing, Rose said. I have a plot of land in the countryside. The one my father left me. It's not worth much, maybe 40 or 50,000? Around that, yes. Sell that too. Immediately. I need cash. Liquid cash. Rose, are you in trouble? No, James. Rose smiled, a small mysterious curve of her lips. I am finally getting out of trouble. The 3-month mark arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Dr. Evans stood at the foot of the bed. He looked pleased. Well, Rose, the x-rays look excellent. The bone has knitted. You'll need a wheelchair for another few weeks and then a walker, but medically, you are cleared for discharge. Discharge. The word hung in the air. You can't go home alone, obviously. Dr. Evans said, flipping a page. You'll need assistance with daily tasks, bathing, cooking, physical therapy. Have you arranged for your son to pick you up? Rose looked at her phone. It sat on the table, black and silent. I'll call him now, she said. She waited until the doctor left. She needed to do this alone. This was the final test, the Hail Mary pass. She dialed Brad. Hey, he answered. He sounded breathless, like he was at the gym. Brad, Rose said, I'm being discharged today. Oh, Brad said. The weights clanked in the background. Today? Already? It's been 90 days, Brad. Right. Yeah. Wow. Time flies. He paused, drinking water. So, what's the plan? Did you call an Uber? Rose gripped the sheets. I can't go home alone, Brad. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't get up the front steps. I can't cook. I need I need to come to your place. Just for a few weeks, until I'm on the walker. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Mom? Brad said, his voice dropping to that reasonable tone she had grown to hate. You know my condo is not accessible. There's a step down into the living room. It's a hazard for you. And honestly, with my work schedule, I'm never there. You'd be alone anyway. Then come to the house, Rose said. Stay with me. I can't live in the suburbs, Mom. My life is in the city. Then what am I supposed to do, Brad? Rose's voice cracked. I'm your mother. I'm asking for help. For once in my life, I'm asking you to help me. Look, don't get hysterical, Brad said. Cindy and I talked about this. We found a place. It's called Sunny Meadows. It's a nursing facility. It's really nice, Mom. They have bingo. They have staff to wipe your... it's better for everyone. A nursing home, Rose repeated. The words tasted like ash. Assisted living, Brad corrected. It's practically a resort. We already called them. They have a bed open, you just go there. We'll handle the paperwork later. And, uh, about the house. What about the house? Rose asked, her heart pounding. Well, since you're going to be at Sunny Meadows for a while, maybe permanently, we figured we could rent the house out, or maybe I could move in for a bit to watch it. Save me some rent money, help me get back on my feet. Win-win, right? Rose closed her eyes. The puzzle was complete. They didn't want her. They wanted her space. They wanted her assets. They wanted her out of the way, tucked into a facility where they could visit once a year at Christmas, while they lived in her house and spent her legacy. The last thread of hope snapped. It wasn't a loud noise. It was a quiet internal severance. Mom, you there? Rose opened her eyes. The sadness was gone. In its place was a cold, calm clarity. I'm here, Brad, she said. Her voice was steady. It was the voice of a woman who had just realized she owed nothing to anyone. So, Sunny Meadows? I'll text you the address, Brad said, sounding relieved. Don't bother, dear, Rose said. What? I said don't bother, I'll handle it. Okay, great. You're being sensible. Proud of you, Mom. I gotta run. My trainer is waving. Click. Rose put the phone down. She didn't cry. She felt lighter. Lighter than she had felt in 20 years. The door opened. It was Elena. She was wearing her street clothes, jeans and a thick sweater. Her shift was over. I heard you are leaving today, Elena said, a sad smile on her face. I came to say goodbye. Rose looked at Elena. She saw the kindness, the strength, the struggle. She saw the daughter she wished she had raised. Elena, Rose said, do you have a car? Yes, an old Honda, but it runs. Good, Rose said. I have a job offer for you. Elena looked confused. A job? But I work here. I need a private nurse, Rose said. Full time, live in. I'll pay you triple your hospital salary. And I'll pay off your tuition in cash. Today, Elena's eyes widened. She dropped her bag. Rose, Mrs. Sterling, are you joking? I never joke about money, Elena, Rose said. But there is a condition. What condition? You have to take me out of here right now. And you can't tell anyone where we are going. Not my son, not my daughter, no one. Elena stared at her. She looked at the fierce determination in the old woman's eyes. She saw a rebellion starting. Where are we going? Elena asked. Rose smiled. It was a dangerous smile. To a hotel first, then to a new life. But the doctor said you need to go home or to a facility. The doctor deals with bones, Rose said, pulling the blanket off her legs. I'm dealing with my soul. Are you in, Elena? Elena hesitated for only a second. She thought of her mother's eyes. She thought of the mountain of debt. And she thought of the lonely woman who had been left to rot in this room for 3 months. Elena picked up her bag. She smiled back. I'm in. An hour later, a wheelchair rolled out of the automatic doors of St. Jude's Hospital. The autumn air was crisp and biting. Rose took a deep breath. It smelled of exhaust fumes and freedom. She didn't look back at the hospital. She didn't look at her phone. Elena pulled her battered Honda Civic up to the curb. She helped Rose into the passenger seat, folding the wheelchair into the back. As the car pulled away, merging into the traffic of the busy city, Rose Sterling, the mother, the widow, the doormat, vanished. In the rearview mirror, the hospital grew smaller and smaller until it was just a white speck in the distance. Rose reached into her purse and turned her phone off. The silence was no longer lonely. It was peaceful. Total Act 1, word count. ID 6040. The new apartment was small. It was a two-bedroom unit on the ground floor of a quiet complex called The Willows. It didn't have a grand staircase. It didn't have a chandelier that required a ladder to dust. It didn't have memories of Arthur lurking in every corner. It had sunlight. That was the first thing Rose noticed. The morning sun flooded through the sliding glass doors, warming the beige carpet. It was a simple, unpretentious warmth. Rose sat in her wheelchair by the window, watching a squirrel bury a nut in a potted plant on the patio. Leg up, Mrs. Sterling, Elena's voice called from the kitchenette. Rose? Rose corrected automatically. Call me Rose. Leg up, Rose. 5 seconds. Squeeze the quad. Rose gritted her teeth. She lifted her right leg. It shook. The muscles, atrophied from 3 months of lying in a hospital bed, screamed in protest. But she held it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She exhaled sharply, lowering the leg. Good, Elena said, walking in with a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. Tomorrow we do 10 seconds. You're a tyrant, Rose smiled weakly. I am a professional. Elena winked. She set the plate down on the small folding table. Eat, you need protein. The physical therapist is coming at 2. They had been here for 3 weeks. The escape from the hospital had been seamless. Rose had used the cash from the sale of her small countryside plot, $55,000, to pay for the first 6 months of rent, buy basic furniture, and set up a small payroll for Elena. For the first time in her life, Rose was spending money on herself. No saving for Brad's next big thing. No putting aside for Cindy's brand launch.
It felt terrifying. It felt exhilarating. Did you check the mail? Rose asked between bites of toast. Yes, Elena said, her face darkening slightly. There was a letter from the bank, forwarded from your old address because of the change of address form we filed. Rose stopped chewing. Open it. Elena tore the envelope. She scanned the document. It is a notification, a late payment notice for the utility bill at the Victorian House, and a notice about a lien inquiry. A lien? Rose frowned. The house is paid off. Arthur paid it off in 1998. It says here an inquiry was made regarding the property's equity by a Mr. Bradley Sterling. Rose put her toast down. The appetite vanished. He's trying to borrow against the house, Rose whispered. He thinks I'm in the nursing home. He thinks the house is just sitting there, waiting for him to plunder it. He can't do that without your signature, Elena said firmly. The deed is in your name. He knows that, Rose said, staring out the window at the squirrel. The squirrel had finished burying its treasure and was now sitting up, alert, watching for predators. He's just getting the paperwork ready. He's going to come looking for me, Elena. Not to visit, but to get a signature. Let him look, Elena said, clearing the plates with an aggressive clatter. We are ghosts, Rose. We are invisible. 5 miles away, the Victorian house was not invisible. It was loud. Music thumped from the living room windows. It wasn't the classical jazz Arthur used to play. It was a heavy, bass-boosted electronic beat that rattled the antique window panes. Brad stood in the centre of the living room. He was wearing a bathrobe, holding a tumbler of whiskey, even though it was barely noon. The house looked different. The pristine order Rose had maintained for 40 years was gone. In its place was a chaotic blend of bachelor pad and storage unit. Pizza boxes were stacked like leaning towers of Pisa on the mahogany coffee table. A massive 85-inch television had been mounted on the wall, directly over the delicate floral wallpaper, with thick black cables trailing down like ugly vines. "Cindy!" Brad yelled over the music. "Cindy! Where is the steamer?" Cindy walked in from the dining room. She was holding a ring light and her phone, live streaming. "Guys, look at this vintage moulding. Literally so cottagecore," she said to her phone, flashing a practiced smile. Then she lowered the phone and glared at her brother. "Stop yelling, Brad. You're ruining my audio. I need the steamer. I have a suit to prep. I'm meeting the investors at 3, Brad snapped. He took a swig of whiskey. "It's in Mom's room," Cindy said, waving a manicured hand vaguely toward the stairs. I moved all her old coats to the garage. They smelled like old people. Brad grunted and headed for the stairs. He walked past the spot where Rose had fallen. He didn't look down. He didn't feel a ghostly chill. He just stepped over the scratch marks on the floor where Rose had dragged herself, annoyed that the floor needed refinishing. He entered the master bedroom. It had been stripped. Rose's vanity, filled with her perfumes, her silver brushes, her jewellery box, was empty. Cindy had curated it. "Junk," Brad muttered, kicking a box of old photos aside. He found the steamer, but then his phone rang. The ringtone was an urgent, jarring siren. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. He knew who it was. Brad hesitated, then answered. "Sterling here." "Mr. Sterling," a voice rasping like sandpaper came through. "This is Mr. Vargas. We are looking at the calendar. It is Tuesday." Brad's throat went dry. "Yes, Mr. Vargas, I know what day it is. Tuesday is payment day, Mr. Sterling. The interest on your bridge loan, 15,000. I'm moving some assets around," Brad stammered, pacing the room. "There's a liquidity crunch. The market is volatile." "We don't care about the market, Mr. Sterling. We care about our calendar. You said you had a property, a Victorian, high equity." Yes, I do," Brad said quickly. "It's a mansion, worth 2 million easy. It's my mother's, but she's incapacitated. She's in a home. I have power of attorney. Well, I'm getting it signed this week." "Get it signed, Mr. Sterling. We can structure a loan against the deed, but we need the paper. If we don't have the paper by Friday, we come to the house and we don't take our shoes off. The line went dead. Brad lowered the phone. His hand was shaking. He needed a signature. He needed it now. He ran downstairs. "Cindy," he shouted, "we need to go." "Go where?" Cindy looked up from a pile of Rose's vintage scarves she was sorting to sell on Depop. "To Sunny Meadows, to see Mom." Cindy wrinkled her nose. "Ew, now? I haven't done my hair." "I don't care about your hair," Brad roared. "Get in the car. We need her to sign the papers today."
The drive to Sunny Meadows Assisted Living Facility took 40 minutes. It was a beautiful place. Manicured lawns, a a fountain in the driveway, and a lobby that looked more like a hotel than a hospital. Brad parked his Porsche, which was 3 payments behind, in the handicap spot. He didn't have a permit, but he didn't care. "Okay, here's the plan," Brad said, checking his reflection in the rearview mirror. "We go in, we cry a little, we tell her we miss her. We tell her the house is too much work to keep up and we need to protect the asset. I slip the paper in front of her, you hand her a pen, boom, done." "Can I take a selfie with her?" Cindy asked, checking her lipstick. "A reunited post would do numbers right now." "Fine. Whatever. Just make sure she signs." They walked into the lobby. The air smelled of lavender and floor wax. Brad marched up to the reception desk. A pleasant woman with reading glasses looked up. "Can I help you?" "Yes. We're here to see a resident," Brad said, putting on his best charming businessman smile. "Rose Sterling. She was admitted about 3 weeks ago? Maybe a month?" The receptionist typed into her computer. Click, clack, click. She frowned. She typed again. "Sterling?" she asked. "Yes, Rose Sterling. Sterling. "I'm sorry, sir," the receptionist said, looking up. "We don't have a resident by that name." Brad laughed nervously. "Check again. My mother, she broke her hip. She came from St. Jude's Hospital." "I'm looking at the master registry, sir. No Rose Sterling. Not in the current residence and not in the pending admissions." Cindy looked up from her phone. "Brad, did you get the name of the place wrong? You're always terrible with details." "I didn't get it wrong," Brad hissed. "I Googled it. This is the only Sunny Meadows in the state." He turned back to the receptionist. "Look, call St. Jude's. There must be a mix-up. She has to be here. Where else would she go?" "I can't release patient information from another hospital due to HIPAA laws, sir. But I can assure you she is not here." Brad felt a cold sweat prickle on the back of his neck. "Okay," he said. "Okay, maybe she's at Shady Pines or Green Valley?" "Brad, you're scaring me," Cindy said, finally pocketing her phone. "Where is Mom?" "Shut up, I'm thinking." Brad pulled out his phone. He dialed Rose's cell number. "The number you have dialed is powered off or outside of coverage area." He dialed again. Same message. "She turned her phone off," Brad muttered. "Why would she turn her phone off?" "Maybe she died," Cindy said, her eyes widening. "Oh my God! Did Mom die and nobody told us?" "She didn't die, you idiot," Brad shouted, causing people in the lobby to stare. "If she died, the lawyers would have called us. The will. The estate." He stopped. "The lawyers." "James Henderson," Brad said. "Dad's old lawyer. He would know." Rose sat in the small living room of her apartment. Elena was in the kitchen making a vegetable stew. The smell of thyme and onions filled the air, replacing the sterile memory of the hospital. Rose had her iPad on her lap. She was looking at a live stream. It was Cindy. Cindy was live from the passenger seat of Brad's car. The caption read, "Frantic search for Mom. Hospital lost her? Hindsight that mystery, that family crisis." Rose watched as Cindy narrated their confusion. Guys, we are literally shaking right now. We went to the nursing home to bring mom flowers and surprises, and they said she wasn't there. Like, how do you lose a whole person? Rose watched Cindy's face. There was no real fear in her eyes. There was drama. There was excitement. It was content. Then Brad's voice came from the driver's seat. He wasn't on camera, but he sounded furious. Put the phone away, Cindy. We need to find Henderson. If she's not in a home, she might have gone back to the house. But we've been at the house. Where is she? Rose tapped the screen and turned the volume down. She felt a strange sensation. It wasn't guilt. It was power. For decades, she had sat by the phone, waiting for them to decide when they would grace her with their presence. She had been a fixed point on their map, always available, always waiting. Now she was the mystery. She was the ghost in the machine. Elena? Rose called out. Elena poked her head out of the kitchen. Yes? They are looking for me. Good, Elena said. Let them run in circles. It is good cardio. Brad is going to see James Henderson, Rose said thoughtfully. James knows I sold the land, but he doesn't know where I am. I made sure of that. I communicated with him only via encrypted email after the signing. So they will hit a wall? Elena said. Yes, but Brad is desperate. I can hear it in his voice. Rose looked at the frozen image of her son's shoulder on the screen. He's in trouble. Real trouble. Do you want to help him? Elena asked. She walked over, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked at Rose intently. This was the test. The maternal instinct is a powerful drug. Withdrawals are painful. Rose looked at the screen. She remembered the 16 hours on the floor. She remembered the illogical comment. She remembered the 3 months of silence. No, Rose said softly. I don't want to help him. I want him to learn. And learning is painful. James Henderson's office was in an old brick building downtown. It smelled of leather books and dust. James sat behind his massive oak desk, cleaning his glasses. Brad and Cindy sat across from him. They looked like two children who had been sent to the principal's office, but they were trying to act like they owned the school. So, James said, putting his glasses back on, you've lost your mother? We didn't lose her, Brad snapped. There was a miscommunication with the hospital discharge team. We need to know where she was transferred. We assume you have the paperwork. I am Mrs. Sterling's attorney, James said calmly. Not her babysitter. Don't play games, James, Brad said, leaning forward. She's not at Sunny Meadows. Is she at another facility? Just give us the address. We need to ensure she is comfortable. James opened a file folder. He glanced at a paper inside, then closed it. I cannot disclose your mother's location, James said. She has instructed me to keep her current residence private. Private? Cindy squeaked. From her own children? Especially from her own children, James said. His voice was dry, devoid of sympathy. Brad stood up. His face was red. This is ridiculous. She's senile. She hit her head when she fell. She's not thinking straight. I am her next of kin. I have rights. Actually, you don't, James said. He pulled out a document. As of 2 weeks ago, Mrs. Sterling revoked all prior power of attorney drafts. She has appointed a legal proxy for her medical decisions. Who? Brad demanded. Who did she appoint? That is also confidential. Brad slammed his hand on the desk. She can't do this. She needs me. I handle the finances. The house. Ah, yes, the house, James said. He allowed a small, cold smile to touch his lips. The Victorian on Elm Street. What about it? Brad asked, his eyes narrowing. Mrs. Sterling is aware that you are occupying the premises, James said. She has decided not to evict you immediately. Brad let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Well, that's something. At least she's lucid enough to know I'm taking care of the place. However, James continued, she has also instructed me to inform you that the property is no longer available as collateral for any financial instruments. Brad froze. What? She has placed the deed in a blind trust. James lied smoothly. It wasn't exactly a lie. It was a legal maneuver Rose had requested to freeze the asset. The house cannot be refinanced, mortgaged, or used as leverage for any loans. It is locked. Brad felt the room spin. The $15,000 due on Friday. Mr. Vargas. The shoes. She. She can't do that. Brad whispered. It's my inheritance. It's her house, Brad, James said sternly. And she's very much alive. Cindy piped up. But what about my stuff? I have a closet full of clothes there. Can I still live there? For now, James said. But I would advise you not to get too comfortable. Mrs. Sterling is re-evaluating her portfolio. James stood up, signaling the meeting was over. If you want to send a message to your mother, you may write a letter. I will scan it and email it to her. If she chooses to reply, she will. A letter? Cindy scoffed. Who writes letters? People who want to be heard, James said. Brad didn't say anything. He was staring at the floor, seeing his life crumble. He turned and walked out of the office without a word. Cindy scrambled to follow him. Brad, wait up. What does locked mean? Can we still have the Halloween party there? Back in the car, Brad gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. She knows, Brad whispered. Knows what? Cindy asked, scrolling through TikTok. She knows I need the money. She did this on purpose. She locked the house to spite me. Maybe she's just confused, Cindy said. Maybe this new proxy person is manipulating her, like in that documentary I saw about the elder abuse scam. Maybe, Brad said. A dark thought formed in his mind. Yes, that has to be it. Some nurse or Sam artist got to her, brainwashed her, convinced her that we're the bad guys. Totally, Cindy agreed. We are the victims here. Brad started the engine. The engine roared, a powerful sound that masked the fear in his gut. We need to find her, Brad said. Not for the signature anymore. We need to find her to prove she's incompetent. If we can prove she's mentally unfit, we can overturn the trust. We can get control back. But how do we find her if the lawyer won't tell us? Brad pulled the car out of the parking lot. He looked at his sister. You're an influencer, right? You have followers. You have eyes everywhere. Yeah? Weaponize them, Brad said. Start a campaign. Missing mother. Elderly woman abducted by scammers. Make her face famous. Someone will spot her. Cindy smiled slowly. Oh, that is good content. A true crime mystery. My engagement will skyrocket. Do it, Brad said. Find her before Friday. The ring light reflected in Cindy's pupils. Two small white halos that made her look almost synthetic. She adjusted the filter to soft morning, which erased her pores and added a glistening tear effect to her lower lashes. She sat in Rose's favorite armchair in the Victorian house. Behind her, she had staged a background, an empty wheelchair, which she had rented for the video, and a framed photo of Rose that she had pulled out of a box in the garage. Record? She whispered to herself. Then the mask slipped on. Her face crumpled into a perfect expression of distraught vulnerability. Hey guys, Cindy's voice wobbled. I didn't want to make this video. I really didn't. But we are desperate. She took a shaky breath, looking off camera as if holding back a sob. My mom, Rose, She's gone. We went to pick her up from the hospital and she just vanished. The lawyers won't tell us anything. They say she's safe, but we think someone has taken advantage of her state. She leaned into the camera lens. She's confused, guys. She had a bad fall. She has cognitive decline. We think a carer might be manipulating her to get access to her pension. It's elder abuse, and we are terrified. A single tear, courtesy of a well placed eye drop before recording, rolled down her cheek. Please, if you see this woman, she held up the photo. She's frail, she can't walk, she needs her family. Use the hashtag #FindRose. Bring our mommy home. She hit stop. The sadness vanished instantly. That was gold, she muttered. She quickly edited the clip, adding sad piano music and a please share sticker. She posted it to TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Within 10 minutes, the comments began to roll in. OMG, praying for you. I hate scammers, poor lady. My aunt was scammed by a nurse, this is real. Sharing in local groups. Cindy watched the view count tick up. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. Her engagement metrics were higher than they had been all year. The tragedy was trending. Across town in the quiet sanctuary of the Willows, Rose was painting. She had never painted before. Arthur had always said hobbies were expensive distractions. But yesterday, Elena had brought home a watercolor set and a pad of thick paper. Paint what you feel, Elena had said. Rose was painting a bird. It wasn't a very good bird. It looked a bit like a blue potato with wings. But it was flying. That was the important part. Elena sat on the sofa, her phone in hand. Her face was pale. She was scrolling through the feed that Cindy had unleashed upon the world. Rose, Elena said, her voice tight. Yes, dear. Do you think this beak is too long? Rose asked, dipping her brush in water. You need to see this. Rose put the brush down. She wheeled her chair over to the sofa. She looked at the screen. She watched her daughter lie. She watched Cindy claim she had cognitive decline. She watched the strangers in the comments pitying the poor, confused old woman. Rose felt a cold flush of humiliation rise up her neck. She is making me look like a fool, Rose whispered. She is telling the world I am senile so that if I speak up, no one will believe me. It is a tactic, Elena said, her eyes flashing with anger. Gaslighting on a global scale. And look at the comments, Rose pointed. They are hunting us. I live in the North End. I'll keep an eye out. I saw an old lady at the park, checking now. Rose looked around the small apartment. Suddenly the walls felt thin. The sunlight felt exposing. They are going to find me, Rose said. I can't go outside. I can't go to my physical therapy session. No. Elena stood up. She looked fierce, like a guardian lioness. That is what they want. They want you to hide. They want you to be the victim. You are not a victim, Rose. You are the architect of your own life. Elena grabbed Rose's coat. We are going to the park. We are going to walk. And if anyone takes a picture, let them. Let them see you are not confused. Let them see you are standing tall. Rose hesitated. She looked at the watercolor bird. It was flying into the unknown. Okay, Rose said. Get my walker. While Cindy was harvesting likes, Brad was harvesting cash. He was in a pawn shop on the seedy side of town. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and desperation. Why? Behind the counter, a man with a thick neck and suspicious eyes examined the items Brad had dumped on the glass. Arthur's watch, Omega Speedmaster 1975, Brad said, trying to sound authoritative. Mint condition. And these pearls? They are Mikimoto, real Japanese saltwater. The pawnbroker grunted. He turned the watch over. Scratches on the bezel, No box, no papers. It's an heirloom there, Brad argued. My father wore that every day. That decreases the value, buddy. Sweat and skin cells. The man put the watch down and picked up the pearls. He rubbed them against his teeth. These are okay, but pearls are out of fashion. Look, I need 5,000, Brad said. Cash. Today. The pawnbroker laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. I'll give you 1,200 for the lot. 1,200? Are you insane? The watch alone is worth 4. Then sell it on eBay and wait 3 weeks for the payment. The man shrugged. You want cash now? 1,200. Brad clenched his fists. He looked at his phone. It was Thursday afternoon. Vargas wanted the money by noon tomorrow. He had scraped together 3,000 from selling his own designer clothes and golf clubs. He was still short, desperately short. Fine, Brad spat. Give me the money. He watched as the man counted out the greasy bills. He watched his father's watch, the watch Arthur had promised to give him on his wedding day, before Brad had laughed and said he wanted a Rolex instead, disappear into a safe behind the counter. He watched his mother's pearls, the ones she wore every Christmas, get tossed into a plastic bin labeled jewelry, Maeskey. He felt a twinge of something in his gut. Nausea? Guilt? No. He pushed it down. It's their fault, he told himself. If Mom hadn't locked the house, I wouldn't have to do this. She forced my hand. He stuffed the money into his pocket and walked out into the blinding afternoon sun. His phone buzzed. A text from Vargas. 18 hours, Mr. Sterling. Tick-tock. Brad wiped sweat from his forehead. He needed more. He needed to find her. If he could find her, he could threaten her. He could force her to sign the release on the trust. He would scream, he would break things, he would do whatever it took. He was done playing the nice son. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Cindy. Brad, look at the Discord server. Someone found her. Brad froze on the sidewalk. He clicked the link. It was a blurry photo taken from a distance. A park bench, a woman with grey hair standing with a walker. Beside her, a younger dark-haired woman holding a coffee cup. The caption read, Is this her? Spotted at Willow Creek Park just now, matches the description. She's walking. Brad zoomed in. It was Rose. She looked different. She was wearing a trench coat he didn't recognize. Her hair was cut in a stylish bob. She wasn't in a wheelchair. Willow Creek Park. That was only 5 miles from the Victorian house. Gotcha, Brad whispered. A predatory grin spread across his face. He ran to his car. At the park, Rose was unaware that her location had been compromised. She was focused on the sensation of pavement under her feet. Left foot, heel to toe. Elena chanted softly. Posture up, eyes forward. Rose gripped the handles of the walker. Her hip ached, but it was a good ache. It was the ache of muscles waking up from a long slumber. She took a step. Then another. The wind blew through her hair. A real wind, not the recycled air of a hospital vent. I'm doing it, Rose laughed breathlessly. Elena, look, I'm walking. You're strutting, Rose, Elena smiled. They stopped by a bench to rest. The sun was dipping lower, casting long golden shadows through the trees. You know, Rose said, looking at a group of children playing on the swings. When Brad was little, I used to bring him here. He loved the slide. He would make me wait at the bottom to catch him. Catch me, Mommy, catch me, he would scream. Rose's smile faded. I caught him every time. Maybe that was the problem. I never let him hit the ground. You cannot blame yourself for his choices, Elena said. You protected him. That is instinct. What he does with that protection is his character. I sold his childhood home, Rose said softly. Am I cruel, Elena? Elena looked at Rose. Is a surgeon cruel when he cuts off a gangrenous limb to save the patient? Rose thought about that. Gangrene. Yes, that was what the relationship had become. Toxic, spreading, deadly. Let's go home, Rose said. I want to paint the bird again. I think I know how to fix the wings. They began the slow walk back to the apartment complex, which bordered the park. They didn't notice the black sedan idling across the street. They didn't notice the phone lens pointed at them from behind a tinted window. That evening, the atmosphere in the apartment was cozy. Elna was studying at the small dining table. Ditya, Rose was watching a documentary on nature. Suddenly, a loud banging on the front door shattered the peace. Thud, thud, thud. Rose jumped, clutching her chest. Elna stood up instantly, her eyes wide. Who is it? Elna called out, moving towards the door but not opening it. Open up, police! A voice shouted. Rose's blood ran cold. Police? Elena looked through the peephole. She frowned. She unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door a crack, keeping the security chain on. Standing there were two uniformed officers, and behind them, looking smug and frantic at the same time, were Brad and Cindy. That's her, Cindy shrieked, pointing a finger at Elena through the crack. That's the kidnapper. She's the nurse from the hospital. Ma'am, please step back, the officer said to Cindy. He turned to Elena. We received a welfare check request for a Rose Sterling. Is she here? I am here, Rose called out. She grabbed her walker. She forced herself to stand. She walked to the door, pushing it open enough to be seen. I am Rose Sterling, she said. Her voice was shaking, but she held her head high. Mom! Brad shouted, pushing past the officer. Oh, thank God. Are you okay? Did she drug you? He tried to reach through the door to grab Rose's arm. Don't touch me, Rose snapped. The authority in her voice was so sharp that Brad actually recoiled. The officer looked between them. Mrs. Sterling, these people claim you are being held against your will and are suffering from dementia. Is that true? I'm not held against my will, Rose said clearly. This is my apartment. My name is on the lease, and this woman is my employee and my friend. She's lying, Cindy yelled, holding up her phone to live stream the encounter. Look at her eyes. She's brainwashed. Mom, tell them the truth. We're here to save you. Save me? Rose laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. Save me from what? From peace? From dignity? She looked at the officer. Officer, these two people are my children. I have not spoken to them in 3 months because they abandoned me in a hospital. I do not wish to see them. Please ask them to leave. The officer looked at Brad. Sir, if she is lucid and asking you to leave, you have to leave. She's not lucid, Brad screamed, his desperation boiling over. She has a trust fund. This woman is stealing it. Check the accounts. I demand you arrest her. Brad, stop, Rose said. She stepped closer to the door, looking him dead in the eye. I know about the loan sharks, Brad. Brad froze. His face went grey. I know why you are here, Rose continued, her voice low but audible to everyone. You don't want me. You want a signature. You want the house. Mom, no. Brad stammered. The house is gone, Brad, Rose said. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Cindy stopped recording. What? Brad whispered. I sold it. Rose lied, or rather, she simplified the truth. The trust had effectively removed it from his reach forever. It's over. There is no collateral. There is no money for you. Brad looked like he had been punched in the gut. He staggered back. You couldn't... I did. Now get off my doorstep before I file a restraining order. Rose looked at the officer. Officer, remove them? The officer nodded. He put a hand on Brad's shoulder. Let's go, folks. Move it along. Brad looked at his mother. His eyes were wild, filled with a mix of terror and hatred. You ruined me, he hissed. You old hag, you ruined me. Rose didn't flinch. No, son, you ruined yourself. I just stopped paying for the damage. She slammed the door. She locked the deadbolt. She slid the chain back into place. Then she turned around and collapsed into Elena's arms. Outside, the scene was chaotic. You can't do this. This is a conspiracy. Cindy was yelling at the police, trying to get content for her outraged followers. Brad leaned against the hood of his car. He was hyperventilating. The house is gone. The words echoed in his skull. His phone buzzed. It was Vargas. I see you are having family drama on the internet, Mr. Sterling. Very entertaining. But it does not pay my bill. Tomorrow at noon. Or we take payment in bone. Brad looked at the phone. He looked at the closed door of the apartment complex. He had no house. He had no mother to manipulate. He had $1,200 in his pocket and a $15,000 debt due in 12 hours. He looked at Cindy. She was still ranting to her phone. Cindy? Brad said. His voice was dead. What? Cindy snapped. Can you believe her? Restraining order. I'm going to cancel her so hard. Shut up, Brad said. We need to leave. Why? Because, Brad said, getting into the car. I have to figure out how to disappear. Inside the apartment, Rose was shaking. Her adrenaline was crashing. Elena guided her to the sofa and wrapped a blanket around her. Breathe, Rose. In and out. Did you hear what he called me? Rose whispered. Hag. He was speaking from fear, Elena said soothingly. He is a cornered animal. He is my son, Rose wept. I held him when he was a baby. I taught him to walk. How did he become this? Money, Elena said simply, and entitlement. It is a poison. Rose wiped her eyes. Is it over? Will they leave us alone now? Elena looked at the door. She knew how desperation worked. She knew that when a man like Brad hit rock bottom, he didn't just walk away. He lashed out. I don't know, Elena said honestly. But tonight you are safe. Tonight the door is locked. Rose looked at the watercolor painting on the table. The bird was still there, frozen in mid-flight. I'm not moving again, Rose said, her voice hardening. I'm done running. If he comes back, I will be ready. She reached for her phone. She turned it on for the first time in weeks. She had one more call to make. To James Henderson. James, she said when he answered, release the file. Are you sure, Rose? James asked. The evidence in that file? It will destroy his reputation? It proves the fraud, the forgery on your previous checks? Everything. He called me a hag, James, after he sold my husband's watch. Rose's voice was cold as ice. He is not my son anymore. He is a thief. Treat him like one. Understood. I'll send the packet to the district attorney in the morning. Rose hung up. She sat in the silence. She had just signed her son's arrest warrant. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like amputation. Necessary to stop the rot, but leaving a phantom pain that would last forever. The morning after the police visit, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with unfallen rain. Rose sat at a small kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Brad's face. Not the twisted, hateful face from last night, but the face of the 6-year-old boy who had scraped his knee and looked at her as if she were the only person in the world who could fix it. You ruined me. The words echoed in the silence of the apartment. You did the right thing, Elena said. She was standing by the sink, rinsing dishes. Her back was stiff, alert. She was worried. Did I? Rose asked, her voice hollow. I sent the file to James. By now, the district attorney has it. Forgery, fraud, embezzlement from a vulnerable senior. Rose looked down at her hands. I just signed my son's prison sentence, Elena. What kind of mother does that? Elena turned off the tap. She dried her hands and walked over, sitting opposite Rose. A mother who refuses to be eaten alive. Elena said softly. In the wild, some mothers have to kick their young out of the nest so they learn to fly, and some have to fight them off because they have become predators. Rose nodded slowly. She knew it was true, but the truth didn't stop the heart from breaking. Her phone buzzed. It was James Henderson. Rose stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Hello, James. It's done, Rose. James's voice was grave. The DA reviewed the evidence, the forged checks from your retirement account, the unauthorized credit lines opened in your name. It's overwhelming. They are issuing an arrest warrant for Bradley Sterling this morning. Rose closed her eyes. A single tear escaped. Okay. There's more. James hesitated. Because of the amount, over $200,000 in total fraud, it's a felony. He's looking at significant time. And, Rose, the press has caught wind of it. Apparently, your daughter's social media campaign backfired. People started digging. Thank you, James. Rose hung up. She felt a strange sense of numbness. The surgery was over, the limb was gone. Now she just had to survive the shock. Cindy sat in her car, parked 3 blocks away from the Victorian house. She was refreshing her feed frantically. The comments on her missing mom video had turned toxic overnight. Wait, isn't your brother the guy who bankrupted his startup? I found court records. He's being sued by 3 vendors. The kidnapper is a registered nurse with a clean record. You guys are the scammers. Hashtag free Rose from her greedy kids. Cindy bit her lip until it bled. The narrative was slipping away. She was losing followers. Brands were emailing her, putting partnerships on pause. She saw a police cruiser turn the corner, heading toward the Victorian house. Oh, crap, Cindy whispered. She knew Brad was in there. He had broken in last night screaming about finding the deed. Cindy made a split-second decision. Survival of the fittest. She mounted her phone on the dashboard. She turned on the ring light. She hit record. Guys, she said, her voice dropping to a somber whisper. I am heartbroken. I just found out the truth. She looked at the camera with wide, innocent eyes. My brother, he lied to me. He lied to all of us. I had no idea he was stealing from Mom. I thought he was protecting her. I feel so betrayed. I'm cooperating fully with the police. I just want my mom to be safe. Brad, if you're watching this, turn yourself in. She posted the video. Caption. The truth hurts. Hashtag justice for Mom. She put the car in drive and sped away, leaving her brother and her conscience in the rearview mirror. Inside the Victorian house, the air was stale and cold. The heating had been cut off days ago. Brad sat on the floor of the living room. He was surrounded by the wreckage of his life. He had torn the house apart, looking for hidden cash, jewelry, anything he could sell to Vargas. He had ripped open the sofa cushions. He had pulled drawers out of the antique highboy and dumped them on the floor. He found nothing. Just old greeting cards, photos of him and Cindy as children. A lock of his hair from his first haircut, preserved in an envelope. He held the envelope in his hand. Brad's first curls, 1990. Rose's handwriting. Trash, Brad muttered. He crumpled the envelope and threw it across the room. He took a swig from a bottle of cheap vodka. The expensive scotch was long gone. He heard a siren in the distance. Then another. He scrambled to the window. Peeking through the heavy velvet curtains, he saw a police cruiser pulling up to the curb. Two officers got out. Panic, cold, and sharp seized him. No, Brad whimpered. Not jail. I can't do jail. He knew what jail meant. It meant no more suits, no more CEO title, no more pretending. It meant being nothing. And Vargas. Vargas had connections in prison. If he went in, he was a dead man walking. He needed a way out. He ran to the back door, locked. He fumbled with the keys, but his hands were shaking too badly. He dropped them. Open up, police! We have a warrant. A voice boomed from the front porch. Brad backed away. He retreated into the dining room. His eyes landed on the fireplace. Above it hung the large oil painting of Arthur Sterling, his father, the man who had built this wealth, the man Brad had spent his whole life trying to emulate but only managed to parody. You're laughing at me, Brad hissed at the painting. You think I'm a failure? He grabbed a heavy brass candlestick from the mantel. Smash! He threw it at the painting. The canvas tore. Arthur's face was ripped in half. I hate you! Brad screamed. I hate this house. I hate her. He looked around. The house. This damn house. It was the source of all his misery. It was the reason he was in debt. It was the reason Rose felt powerful. If he couldn't have it, he looked at the bottle of vodka in his hand. He looked at the pile of old newspapers and missing flyers Cindy had printed out. A dark, nihilistic calm settled over him. Let's see how much it's worth now, Brad whispered. He splashed the vodka over the pile of papers. He splashed it on the curtains. He splashed it on the antique rug. He pulled a lighter from his pocket. At the Willows, Rose's iPad chimed with a frantic, piercing alarm. Security alert. Smoke detected. Living room. Zone 1. Rose dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, brown liquid splashing over her slippers. Elena! Rose screamed. Elena ran in from the bedroom. What? What is it? The house, Rose gasped, pointing at the iPad. The alarm? Smoke? Elena grabbed the device. She tapped into the camera feed. The image was grainy but clear enough. Flames were licking up the curtains in the dining room. Smoke was billowing across the lens. And there in the center of the frame stood a man. He was standing still, watching the fire grow. He looked like a ghost. It's Brad, Rose whispered. Her hand flew to her mouth. He's burning it down. I'm calling 911, Elna said, her fingers flying across her phone. He's going to die in there, Rose said. Her voice was trembling. He's not moving, Elena. Look at him. He's just standing there. For all the anger, for all the betrayal, the primal instinct roared back to life. That was her child standing in a burning building. We have to go, Rose said, grabbing her walker. Rose, no. Elena grabbed her arm. The police are there. The fire department is coming. You cannot go there. It is dangerous. He is my son, Rose shouted. A sound so raw it made the windows rattle. I don't care if he's a monster. I gave him life. I will not watch him burn to death on an iPad. She pulled away from Elena with surprising strength. Get the car, or I will crawl there. Elena looked at Rose's face. She saw the terror, but she also saw the unbreakable will. There was no arguing with this. Okay, Elena said. Okay, we go. The drive was a blur of honking horns and run red lights. Elena drove with focused intensity, her knuckles white on the wheel. Rose sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. She was praying. She hadn't prayed in years, not since Arthur died, but she prayed now. Please don't let him die. Let him go to jail. Let him hate me forever. Just don't let him be ash. They turned onto Elm Street. The sky was black with smoke. Orange light flickered against the clouds. Crowds had gathered on the sidewalk. neighbors in bathrobes filming with their phones. The Victorian house, the grand dame of the street, was groaning. Flames were shooting out of the downstairs windows. The glass shattered with a loud pop as they pulled up. Fire trucks were already there, sirens wailing. Men in heavy gear were unrolling hoses. Stay here, Elena ordered, parking the car behind a fire truck. Rose ignored her. She opened the door. She grabbed her walker. The heat hit her instantly. It was a physical wall, smelling of melting plastic and burning wood. Brad! Rose screamed. Her voice was swallowed by the roar of the fire. She hobbled toward the police line. An officer intercepted her. Ma'am, get back. It's not safe. My son is in there, Rose cried, grabbing the officer's vest. Did he get out? Where is he? The officer looked at her, then at the burning house. We don't know, ma'am. The team just got here. The structure is unstable. Rose watched the house. Her bedroom window, the window she had looked out of for 40 years, was dark, but smoke was pouring from the eaves. Then the front door burst open. A figure stumbled out. It was Brad. He was coughing, covered in soot, his expensive suit singed and ruined. He fell to his knees on the lawn, retching. Two firefighters rushed to him, dragging him further away from the inferno. Rose felt her knees give way. He was alive? She leaned heavily on her walker, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of joy, but tears of exhaustion. The firefighters checked him. He was breathing. He pushed them away, staggering to his feet. He looked wild, deranged. He turned and saw her. Rose stood under the street lamp, the orange glow of her burning legacy illuminating her face. She looked like a statue of judgment. Brad's eyes locked onto hers. He didn't look remorseful. He didn't look relieved. He pointed a shaking finger at the burning house. Happy now? Brad screamed over the roar of the flames. It's all gone! It's all gone! You have nothing! The crowd gasped. The police moved in, grabbing Brad's arms. Bradley Sterling, you are under arrest. An officer shouted, forcing him to the ground. You did this! Brad shrieked as they handcuffed him. He twisted his head to look at Rose, his face contorted with madness. You selfish old witch! You should have just died on the stairs. Why didn't you just die? Rose stood frozen. The words hit her harder than the heat. Why didn't you just die? Elena was beside her now, her arm wrapped protectively around Rose's shoulders. Don't listen to him, Rose. He is sick. He is gone. Rose watched as they dragged her son toward the police cruiser. He was kicking and screaming, a man reduced to a tantruming child. She looked at the house. The roof over the porch collapsed with a thunderous crash, sending a shower of sparks into the night sky. Arthur's house. The memories. The height chart penciled on the kitchen door frame. The spot where she and Arthur had danced on their anniversary. It was all burning. Rose watched it burn. And as the flames consumed the past, she felt a strange, terrifying lightness in her chest. The tether was cut. It's just wood, Rose. Elena whispered, crying. It's just wood and brick. No, Rose said softly, her voice steadying. It was a cage. She turned away from the fire. She looked at the police car where her son sat, thrashing against the window. Goodbye, Brad, she whispered. She turned to Elena. Take me home, Rose said. Take me to our home. They walked away, leaving the ashes of the Sterling legacy behind them. The flashing lights of the fire trucks painted their backs in rhythm. Red, white, red, white, as they moved into the darkness, away from the heat and toward the cold, clean air of the future. The day after the fire, the world was grey. It wasn't just the weather, though the sky was a sheet of unpolished slate. It was the color of Rose's soul. She sat in the armchair at the willows, staring at her hands. Her cuticles were stained with soot. She had scrubbed them 3 times with lemon juice and baking soda. But the black lines remained, etched into her skin like a tattoo of shame. The television was on, volume low. The morning news cycle was feasting on the carcass of her family. Wealthy heir burns down million-dollar estate. From CEO to arsonist, the fall of Bradley Sterling. Mother watches as son destroys legacy. They showed the mugshot. Brad looked deranged. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot, his face smeared with ash. Ari, he didn't look like the boy who had played cello in the middle school orchestra. He looked like a stranger, a dangerous stranger. Turn it off, please, Rose whispered. Eleanor, who was ironing a blouse in the corner, unplugged the TV. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy. You have the meeting with the detective at 10, Eleanor said gently. Do you want me to cancel? We can say you are unwell. No, Rose said. She stood up, her joints popping. She reached for her walker, then stopped. She pushed the walker away. She grabbed her cane instead. I'm not unwell, I'm just empty. Empty is a start, Elena said. Empty means there is room for something new. You and your proverbs, Rose managed, a faint, dry smile. Get the car, Elena. Let's finish this. The police station was an assault on the senses. It smelled of stale coffee, floor wax, and misery. Fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. Rose sat in a small interview room. Detective Miller, a man with a kind face and tired eyes, sat opposite her. He had a thick file in front of him. Mrs. Sterling, Miller said, I know this is difficult, but we need to formalize the charges. The district attorney is pushing for arson in the first degree, coupled with the previous fraud charges. Is he? Rose hesitated. Is he in the general population? In the jail? He is in a holding cell. He's on suicide watch, ma'am. He's been erratic, screaming about a trust fund, screaming about you. Rose looked at the metal table. She saw her reflection in the brushed steel, a grey-haired woman with hollow cheeks. He wants me to bail him out, doesn't he? He used his one phone call to call a bondsman, Miller said. But given the flight risk and the severity of the crime, burning down an occupied dwelling, even if he didn't know you weren't inside initially, the judge set bail at 500,000. He doesn't have it. He thinks I have it, Rose said. Do you? Miller asked. It wasn't an accusation, just a question of fact. Rose thought about the account James Henderson had set up. The proceeds from the land sale, the liquidation of her retirement. She had money. Not enough to bail him out and survive, but enough to help. The old Rose, the Rose who cooked prime rib for ghosts, would have signed the check. She would have mortgaged her soul to keep up appearances, to save him from consequences. I have nothing for him, Rose said clearly. My son died a long time ago, detective. The man in that cell is just a thief who wears his face. Miller nodded slowly. He pushed a paper across the table. This is the victim impact statement. You don't have to fill it out now, but it helps with the sentencing. Sentencing? Rose tasted the word. How long? For arson and grand larceny? With his lack of remorse? 10 years. Maybe 15. 15 years. He would be 50 when he got out. A middle-aged man with nothing. I'll fill it out, Rose said. She took the pen. She didn't write about the house. She didn't write about the money. She wrote about the 16 hours on the floor. She wrote about the silence. She wrote, he broke my heart long before he broke my hip. The fire was just the physical manifestation of what he had already done to our family. I do not ask for leniency. I ask for peace. She signed her name, Rose Sterling. The signature was firm. As she walked out of the interview room, she passed a holding area. Through a small reinforced glass window, she saw him. Brad was sitting on a metal bench, his head in his hands. He looked small. He was rocking back and forth. Rose stopped. Her hand hovered over the glass. Elena stepped up beside her. Do you want to go in? Rose watched him for a full minute. She remembered nursing him when he had the chicken pox. She remembered his first heartbreak. She felt the phantom pull of the umbilical cord, the biological imperative to protect. But then she remembered the look in his eyes last night. Why didn't you just die? No, Rose said, pulling her hand back. If I go in there, he will beg. And if he begs, I might break. And I cannot afford to break again. She turned her back on her son. It was the hardest physical movement she had ever made. Harder than learning to walk again? Let's go. The lobby of the police station was crowded. Reporters were camping out, waiting for a quote. Rose put on large dark sunglasses. Elena guided her through the side exit, but they were intercepted. Not by the press, by Cindy. Cindy was wearing a modest black dress, no makeup, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like the picture of a grieving daughter. She was standing by the vending machines holding a diet soda. Mom! Cindy gasped, rushing over. She tried to hug Rose. Elna stepped in between them, her arm like a steel bar. Back up, Cindy. I just want to talk to my mother, Cindy cried, tears springing to her eyes instantly. Mom, it's me. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was going to do that. He's crazy, Mom. I was so scared. Rose looked at her daughter. She looked at the lack of makeup. It was a costume. Cindy never left the house without contouring, unless she wanted to appear vulnerable. You were live streaming, Rose said. Her voice was flat. I was documenting evidence, Cindy pleaded. To help you. Mom, listen, I'm a victim too. The brands, they are dropping me. My agency fired me this morning. They said I'm brand risk because of Brad. And? Rose asked. And I have nowhere to go. Cindy sniffled. The police seized the house as a crime scene. I can't get my stuff. I have no money, Mom. I was thinking maybe I could stay with you? Just for a bit? Until I get back on my feet? We can heal together. Rose looked at this 30-year-old woman. She saw the calculation behind the tears. Cindy didn't want a mother. She wanted a lifeboat. You have friends, Cindy, Rose said. You have thousands of friends online. Ask them. Mom, don't be cruel. I'm your daughter. You are a stranger who calls me Mom when she needs an ATM, Rose said. You helped him hunt me down. You told the world I was senile. You mocked my pain for clicks. I was confused. No, Cindy, you were greedy. And now you are inconveniently poor. Rose stepped closer, leaning on her cane. I am not your safety net anymore. I am not your content. I am done. But what am I supposed to do? Cindy wailed, her mask slipping, revealing the petulant child underneath. I can't work a normal job. I'm an influencer. Then influence yourself to grow up, Rose said. She signaled to Elena. They walked past Cindy, out the heavy double doors, and into the parking lot. Behind them, Cindy shouted, You're horrible! You're abandoning me! Rose didn't look back. She got into the car. She buckled her seatbelt. That, Rose exhaled, was overdue. You are strong, Elena said, starting the engine. I'm not strong, Rose closed her eyes. I'm just out of options. There is a difference. Take me to the house, Rose said as they pulled out of the station. Rose, are you sure? Elena asked. It is a mess. I need to see it in the daylight. I need to know it's really gone. They drove to Elm Street. The street was cordoned off with yellow police tape. The smell of wet charcoal and burnt plastic hung in the air for blocks. The Victorian house was a skeleton. The roof had collapsed entirely. The front porch was a pile of blackened timber. The windows were gaping black eyes. Rose stood on the sidewalk leaning on her cane. The wind blew ash onto her coat. She looked at the spot where the dining room used to be. The table where she had set the prime rib. Gone. She looked at the second floor. The bedroom where she had slept with Arthur for 30 years. Gone. She looked at the stairs that had broken her. They were gone too, consumed by the fire. She waited for the grief to hit her. She waited for the crushing weight of loss to bring her to her knees. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt a strange, airy sensation. For 40 years, she had been the custodian of this museum. She had dusted the memories. She had polished the ghosts. She had stayed in this house because she thought leaving it would be leaving Arthur. But Arthur wasn't in the wood. He wasn't in the curtains. It was a heavy house, Rose whispered. What? Elna asked. It was so heavy, Rose said, looking at the charred remains. I was carrying it on my back. The mortgage, the maintenance, the memories. The expectation that I had to keep the family gathered there. She looked at the pile of rubble. Brad didn't just burn my house, Elena. He burned my prison. She saw something glinting in the debris near the front path. It was outside the police tape. She bent down, wincing slightly. She picked it up. It was a ceramic garden gnome. Hideous thing. Arthur had bought it as a joke 20 years ago. It was singed, one ear was missing, and its red hat was covered in soot. But it was intact. It was smiling its stupid painted smile. Rose looked at the gnome. She started to laugh. It started as a chuckle, then grew into a full-bellied laugh. A laugh that shook her shoulders. A laugh that made tears stream down her face. Elena looked at her, worried. Rose? Look at him, Rose gasped, holding up the gnome. The whole house burns down. The antiques, the expensive rugs, the legacy, and this ugly little bastard survives. She laughed until her sides hurt. It was the laughter of hysteria. Yes, but also of release. It was the absurdity of life. You try so hard to save the precious things, and they break. The cheap, silly things survive. I am the gnome, Rose wiped her eyes. I am the ugly little thing that survived the fire. She dropped the gnome back into the grass. She didn't want it. She didn't want any of it. Let's go, Elena, Rose said, turning away from the ruins. I've seen enough. Where to now? Elena asked. Not back to the apartment, Rose said. I can't sit in that room and wait for the trial. I can't wait for Cindy to find my door. Then where? Rose looked at the sky. The clouds were breaking. A sliver of blue was peeking through. Do you remember you told me about your mother? Rose asked. In the Philippines, you said she has a small farm near the ocean. Elena looked surprised. Yes, in Batangas. It is very simple. Chickens, mango trees. Does she have a guest room? Elena's eyes widened. Rose. It is a hut. It is not like this. No air conditioning, no bathtub. Does it have peace? Rose asked. Yes. It has ocean wind and mangoes. And does she need money for her eye surgery? Yes. Book the tickets in, Rose said. I have a passport. I haven't used it since 1995. But it's valid. I renewed it last year thinking maybe the kids would take me on a cruise. She shook her head at her own foolishness. I'm taking myself on a trip. And you are coming with me. You can visit your mother. And I can disappear for a while. Rose? Elena smiled, a genuine beaming smile. My mother would love you. She cooks very good adobo. I love adobo, Rose said. They got into the car. As they drove away, Rose looked in the side mirror one last time. The burnt house was shrinking. The yellow tape was a blur. She took her phone out of her pocket. She opened her contacts. Brad Sterling, delete. Cindy Sterling, delete. She held the phone. It felt lighter. Turn on the radio, Elena, Rose said. Something loud. Something with a beat. Elena laughed and turned on the radio. A pop song filled the car. Rose Sterling, the forgotten mother, the arson victim, the widow, leaned back in her seat. She closed her eyes. For the first time in 3 months, she wasn't waiting for a call. She was moving, and she was moving forward. The heat was the first thing. It wasn't the dry, suffocating heat of a central heating system cranked too high. It was a wet, living heat. It smelled of salt, diesel fumes, roasting meat, and wet earth. It wrapped around Rose like a heavy blanket the moment the automatic doors of Ninoy Aquino International Airport slid open. Rose sat in her wheelchair, pushed by a porter, while Elena frantically waved at a group of people behind the barrier. Inay! Inay! Elena shouted, her professional nurse demeanor dissolving into the joy of a daughter returning home. Rose watched as a small weathered woman with cloudy eyes was guided forward by two teenage boys. This was Maria, Elena's mother. She was wearing a simple floral dress, her grey hair pulled back in a loose bun. She looked frail, yet she stood with the same quiet dignity Rose had seen in Elena. Elena! The old woman cried out, reaching blindly. They collided in a hug that seemed to knock the wind out of both of them. Tears, laughter, Tagalog phrases flying too fast for Rose to catch. It was a chaotic, loud, messy display of love. Rose felt a pang of envy, sharp and quick. But she pushed it away. She was a spectator here, not the main character. Then Elena pulled back and turned to Rose. Aine, this is Rose, the woman I told you about, the one who saved us. Maria turned her head. Her eyes were milky white from the cataracts, useless for seeing. But she stepped forward with sure footing. She reached out. Rose hesitated, then took the woman's rough, calloused hand. Rose, Maria said, her English heavily accented but clear. Thank you. Thank you for bringing my girl home. Maria didn't shake Rose's hand. She brought it to her forehead, a gesture of deep respect. Then she moved her hands to Rose's face, tracing the line of her jaw, her cheekbones. You have a sad face, Maria whispered. But the sadness is old. We will wash it away. Rose felt a lump in her throat. I hope so, she managed to say. The drive to the province of Batangas took 4 hours. It was an assault on the senses. The van Elena had hired wove through traffic that seemed to obey no laws of physics. Jeepneys painted in neon colors honked musical horns. Vendors sold flowers and cigarettes in the middle of the highway. In her old life, Rose would have been terrified. She would have clutched her pearls and locked the doors. But here, sandwiched between Elena and a basket of rambutan fruit, Rose just watched. She saw life. It was messy, loud, and vibrant. It was the opposite of the silent, empty Victorian house. They arrived at the village just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of purple and orange. Elena's home was not a mansion. It was a small compound of concrete and bamboo structures, surrounded by mango trees and bougainvillea. Chickens roamed freely in the yard, and a dog with 3 legs hopped over to greet them, wagging its tail furiously. It is not the Ritz, Elena said apologetically as she helped Rose out of the van. Rose leaned on her cane, smelling the air. It smelled of wood smoke and jasmine. It's perfect, Rose said. And she meant it. The first week was a period of adjustment. Rose's body, stiff from the flight and the trauma of the last few months, rebelled. The humidity made her hair frizzy and her clothes stick to her skin. The mosquitoes treated her like an exotic buffet. But the rhythm of the farm was seductive. There were no clocks here. You woke up when the roosters crowed, which was ungodly early. You ate when the food was ready. You slept when the generator was turned off and the darkness became absolute. Rose was given the guest room, a small structure with woven bamboo walls and a tin roof. It had a ceiling fan that clicked rhythmically and a bed with a firm mattress. On the fourth morning, Rose woke up before dawn. She maneuvered herself out of bed. Her hip was stiff, but the warm air seemed to loosen the joints faster than the cold damp of the US. She grabbed her cane and walked out onto the small porch. Maria was already up. She was sitting on a wooden stool in the yard, shelling beans by feel. Rose walked over and sat on the bench nearby. "Good morning," Rose said. "Good morning, Rose." Maria smiled without looking up. "Did the lizards keep you awake? They are very talkative tonight." "A little," Rose admitted. "But it's better than sirens." They sat in companionable silence for a while. The only sounds were the snap of the beans and the distant murmur of the ocean. "Elena tells me you have children," Maria said suddenly. Rose stiffened. She hadn't talked about Brad or Cindy since she got on the plane. "Yes, a son and a daughter." "And they are not good children?" Maria asked. It wasn't a judgment, it was a simple inquiry, like asking if the mangoes were ripe. "They are lost." Rose chose her words carefully. "They loved the things I could give them, but they didn't love me." Maria nodded, her hands never stopping their work. "That is the danger of giving too much fruit. The tree becomes heavy and the branches break. Sometimes you must prune the tree so it can survive." "I pruned them," Rose whispered. "I cut them off completely." "Does it hurt?" "Like a phantom limb," Rose said. "I still wake up worrying if Brad has eaten. I still wonder if Cindy is warm. But then I remember they tried to burn me." Maria stopped shelling beans. She turned her sightless eyes toward Rose. "Fire cleans the land, Rose. Here, after the harvest, we burn the fields. It looks like death. The ground is black and ugly. But the ash makes the soil rich. The next crop grows stronger." She reached out and patted Rose's knee. "You are in the ash time now, but the green time is coming." Rose looked at this woman who had nothing. No wealth, no sight, living in a house made of grass, and felt a profound sense of humility. Maria understood more about life in her darkness than Rose had understood in 40 years of comfort. "Can I help with the beans?" Rose asked. Maria smiled. She handed Rose a pod. "Snap the ends, pull the string, it is easy." And there, under the mango tree, Rose Sterling learned how to shell beans. It was a small repetitive action. Snap, pull, drop. It was meditation. For the first time in years, her mind wasn't racing with anxiety. It was just present. 2 weeks later, the physical therapy moved to the water. The village was only a 10-minute walk from the beach. It wasn't a tourist beach with white sand and umbrellas. It was a fisherman's beach with dark volcanic sand and boats painted in bright blues and greens. Elna walked Rose down to the water's edge. Rose was wearing a swimsuit she had bought at the airport duty-free. She felt self-conscious about her scars, the long pink line on her hip, the sagging skin of age. "The ocean doesn't care, Rose," Elena said, reading her mind. "The ocean has seen everything. Dinosaurs, wars, shipwrecks. A surgical scar is nothing." Rose took a deep breath and stepped into the water. It was warm, like bath water. She waded in until the water was waist deep. The buoyancy took the weight off her hip instantly. "Okay," Elena said, standing beside her. "Lift the knee. Push against the water." Rose lifted her leg. The water provided gentle resistance. It didn't hurt. Again. Rose did it again and again. She felt weightless. She looked out at the horizon, where the blue of the sea met the blue of the sky. I'm floating, Rose laughed. You are, Elena grinned. Now try to tread water. Use your arms. Rose pushed off the sandy bottom. She paddled. She was swimming. Not fast, not gracefully, but she was moving under her own power. She closed her eyes and let the salt water hold her up. This, she imagined the water washing away everything. The smell of smoke, the sound of Brad screaming, the cold silence of the hospital room. She was just a body in the water, a speck in the universe. When she waded back to shore, tired but exhilarated, she saw Maria sitting on a piece of driftwood, holding a towel. Did you swim to America? Maria joked. Not today, Rose said, wrapping herself in the towel. America is too far. I like it here. That evening, Rose opened her laptop. She had established a routine of checking her email only once a week. It was a way of keeping the toxic waste of her past contained. There was an email from James Henderson. Subject: Update on case number 44492. Rose sat on her bed under the mosquito net and opened it. Dear Rose, I hope this email finds you well. The weather here is dreadful. An update on the proceedings. Bradley's defense attorney attempted to secure a plea deal yesterday. They offered a guilty plea for a reduced sentence of 3 to 5 years in a minimum security facility, citing mental distress and provocation. The district attorney rejected it, thanks in large part to your victim impact statement. The DA is holding firm on the first-degree arson charge. They are going to trial next month. If convicted, he is looking at a minimum of 8 years, maximum of 15. Regarding Cindy, the investigation into her complicity is ongoing, but criminal charges are unlikely to stick due to lack of direct evidence. However, she is facing civil suits from 3 sponsors for breach of contract. She has been evicted from her apartment and is currently reportedly staying with a friend in New Jersey. The insurance payout for the Victorian house has been processed. Since the fire was an act of arson by a relative, the claim was complicated. But because you were the sole owner and not the perpetrator, the policy holds. The funds, $1.8 million, have been deposited into your trust account. You are a very wealthy woman, Rose. Let me know if you have any instructions. Best, James. Rose read the email twice. She looked at the number, $1.8 million, plus the money from the land, plus her savings. She had nearly $2 million. She looked around the bamboo room. She looked at her simple oscillating fan. She didn't feel wealthy because of the number. She felt wealthy because she didn't need the number. She hit reply. James, do not accept any calls from them. If Brad writes letters from prison, do not forward them to me. Store them in a box. Maybe one day I will read them. Not now. Also, I need you to wire $5,000 to the account I am attaching below. It is for a medical procedure. Stay warm, Rose. She sent the email. Then she closed the laptop and shoved it under the bed. She walked out to the kitchen where Elena was cooking dinner. Adobo. The smell of vinegar and garlic filled the air. Elena, Rose said. Yes? Pack a bag for tomorrow. We are going to Manila. Elena looked up worried. Manila? Why? Is something wrong? Do you need a hospital? No. Rose smiled. Maria needs a hospital. We are getting her eyes fixed. Elena froze. The spoon dropped from her hand. Rose. The surgery. It is expensive. We are saving, but it will take another year. It is paid for. Rose said, I just wired the money to the clinic. Elena stared at her. Tears welled up in her eyes instantly. Rose, I cannot accept this. You pay my salary, that is enough. It is not charity, Elena, Rose said firmly. Consider it a bonus, or rent, or just consider it an investment. Investment in what? In beauty, Rose said. Your mother sees the world more clearly than any of us, but I want her to see your face when you smile. I want her to see the ocean. I want her to see the green time she told me about. Elena rushed over and hugged Rose. It was a fierce, desperate hug. Thank you, Elena sobbed into Rose's shoulder. Thank you, thank you. Rose patted her back. She felt the warmth of another human being, a warmth that asked for nothing, that demanded no sacrifice, that was simply gratitude. You saved my life, Elena, Rose whispered. I'm just returning the favor. The trip to Manila was quick. The surgery was routine. 3 days later, back at the farm, the bandages came off. They sat in the living room. The doctor had given strict instructions about light, so the curtains were drawn. Rose stood in the corner, watching. Elena slowly unwound the gauze from her mother's head. Maria blinked. Her eyes were red and watery, but the milky film was gone. She looked around the dim room. She looked at her hands. She wiggled her fingers. Then she looked up at Elena. Anak, Maria whispered. Child. She reached out and touched Elena's face. But this time she was looking. Really looking. You have a wrinkle here, Maria laughed, wiping a tear from Elena's cheek. You work too hard. Elena laughed through her sobs. I'm just tired, eh? Then Maria turned to the corner. She squinted. Rose? Rose stepped forward. I'm here, Maria. Maria looked at her. She studied Rose's face for a long time. The grey hair, the lines of worry, the sharp blue eyes. Ah, Maria nodded, a smile spreading across her face. I was right. Right about what? Rose asked. You are beautiful, Maria said. You look like a warrior who has put down her sword. Rose felt a blush creep up her neck. She hadn't been called beautiful in 20 years. And you? Rose said, her voice thick with emotion. You look like you are ready to see the sunset. Yes. Maria stood up a bit unsteadily. I want to see my chickens. I want to see if the rooster is as ugly as he sounds. They all laughed. It was a good sound. A healing sound. That evening, they sat on the porch. The sun was setting, a glorious riot of pink and gold. Maria sat in the middle, staring at the horizon with greedy eyes, drinking in every photon of light. Elna sat on one side, holding her mother's hand. Rose sat on the other side. She held a glass of iced tea. The condensation was cold against her palm. She thought about Brad in his cell. It was night in America now. He was probably staring at a concrete wall. She felt a flicker of pity, but it was distant, like watching a tragedy on the news that happened in another country. He chose his wall, Rose thought. I chose the sky. She took a sip of tea. The ice clinked. Rose, Maria said, not taking her eyes off the clouds. Yes? Do you have a dream? A dream, Rose asked. I am 64, Maria. My dream is to have a hip that doesn't hurt. No? Maria shook her head. That is a wish. A dream is for the soul. You are free now. You have money. You have time. What do you want to do? Rose looked at the ocean. She thought about the watercolor bird she had painted. She thought about the children in the village school she had passed by, sitting on dirt floors, sharing tattered books. She thought about her former life as a teacher, a life she had given up to raise Brad and Cindy, to be a good mother. She looked at Elna, who was smart and capable but had almost been crushed by poverty. I think, Rose said slowly, the idea forming as she spoke. I think I want to build something. Not a house, not for me. What then? A school, Rose said. Or a library. Here in the village. A place where children can learn to fly, but also learn to land safely. Elena looked at her surprised. Rose, that would cost... I have $2 million, Elena, Rose interrupted. I can't take it with me when I die, and I'm certainly not leaving it to the state. She smiled. Let's spend it. Let's spend it all. Let's make something that lasts longer than a Victorian house. Maria clapped her hands. A library? I will read every book. You will be the head librarian, Rose declared. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, plunging the world into twilight. But for Rose, it wasn't getting dark. The lights were just coming on. 6 months later, the dry season had arrived in Batangas. The air was thick with dust and the smell of drying hay. But in the center of the village, there was a new smell: fresh concrete and sawdust. Rose stood in the middle of a construction site. She wore a yellow hard hat over her grey bob, and her cane was used less for walking and more for pointing. No, no, Rose said, gesturing to the foreman. The ramp needs to be wider, standard ADA compliance. Or whatever the Philippine equivalent is. Make it wide enough for 2 wheelchairs to pass. The foreman, a burly man named Dow, who had initially been terrified of the strict American woman, grinned. Yes, ma'am, Rose. Double wide. For racing. Rose chuckled. Exactly, for racing. The structure was rising fast. It was a single-story building with large windows to catch the sea breeze, high ceilings to disperse the heat, and walls painted a soft, welcoming yellow. It was the Sterling Learning Center. Rose had debated the name. She had thought about changing it to erase the Sterling legacy entirely. But then she realized, why should she let Brad and Cindy ruin her name? She was a Sterling too. Arthur was a Sterling. The name meant of high quality. She would reclaim it. Rose! Elena came running from the makeshift office tent, holding a laptop. Her face was pale. It is James, Elena said, breathless. He's on Skype. He says the verdict is coming in. Rose felt her stomach drop. The sensation was immediate and visceral, a cold stone in her gut. She handed her clipboard to the foreman. Keep pouring the foundation for the back room, she ordered, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. She followed Elena into the tent. James Henderson's face was pixelated on the screen, frozen in a grim expression until the connection stabilized. Rose, James asked, can you hear me? I'm here, James, Rose said, sitting down heavily on a plastic chair. Tell me. James took a sip of water. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. The trial had been brutal, a media circus that had dragged the family name through the mud. The jury returned a verdict an hour ago, James said. Guilty on all counts. Arson in the first degree. Grand larceny. Fraud. Rose closed her eyes. She exhaled a breath she felt she had been holding since the night of the fire. And the sentence? The judge was not lenient, Rose. He cited the predatory nature of the financial crimes against a vulnerable parent. And, ironically, the video evidence provided by the prosecution played a huge role. Video evidence? Rose frowned. The security footage? No, James said. Cindy's videos? The live stream she made the day you were missing. The video she made outside the police station. The prosecution used them to establish a pattern of entitlement and neglect. They argued that Brad's actions were the culmination of a long-term conspiracy to dehumanize and defraud you. Rose stared at the screen. The irony was suffocating. Cindy's obsession with fame, her need to document every moment for attention, had hammered the final nail into her brother's coffin. How long, James? 12 years, James said softly. No parole eligibility for at least 8. 12 years. Rose did the math. Brad was 34. He would be 46 when he walked free. He would have missed the prime of his life. He would have missed the chance to have children, to build a career, to live. He was in a cage, just like he had tried to put her in a cage. Did he... Rose's voice cracked. Did he say anything? James hesitated. He shuffled some papers. He made a statement before sentencing. Read it to me. Rose, you don't need to hear it. Read it, James. I need to know. James sighed. He picked up a sheet of paper and read in a monotone voice. My mother had the means to help me. She watched me drown. She chose a stranger over her own flesh and blood. I am here because she failed me. I hope she enjoys her money in hell. The silence in the tent was absolute. Outside, a rooster crowed. A saw buzzed. Rose felt a tear slide down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of guilt. It was a tear of grief for the boy who had once drawn her a picture of a ninja. That boy was dead. The man who spoke those words was a stranger. Thank you, James, Rose whispered. There is one more thing, James said. Cindy. What about her? Since the verdict, her situation has deteriorated. She sent an email to my office this morning. She wants you to know she is unwell. Is she sick? She's broke, Rose. She is working a double shift at a diner in Trenton. She is facing 3 lawsuits. She claims she is homeless. James looked at the camera. She's asking for $5,000 to start over. She says she will sign a non-contact order if you pay it. Rose looked at Elena. Elena was sitting in the corner, twisting her hands, looking ready to defend Rose if necessary. Rose thought about the beans. Snap, pull, drop. You prune the dead branches so the tree can live. No, Rose said. James looked surprised. No? Not a penny? Rose said. Her voice was stronger now. If I give her money, she will never learn to stand. She is young. She is able-bodied. She can work. She is threatening to go to the press again, to sell a My Mother the Monster story. Let her, Rose shrugged. Let her tell the world I'm a monster. The people who matter. They know who I am. Very well, James said. I will inform her. And Rose, you are a brave woman. I'm just a tired woman, James. Goodbye. She clicked end call. The screen went black. Rose sat in the silence for a long time. She felt the weight of the verdict settling on her shoulders. It was heavy, but it was a distinct weight. It was the weight of a stone marker on a grave. It marked the end. Elena walked over and placed a hand on Rose's shoulder. Are you okay? Rose looked up. Her eyes were dry. He blamed me, Rose said quietly. Until the very end, he blamed me. It is easier to blame the mirror than to fix the face, Elena said. Rose stood up. She grabbed her cane. Come on, Rose said. The concrete is drying. We have work to do. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. The Sterling Learning Center neared completion. Books arrived by the truckload. Rose had ordered thousands of them. Children's books, encyclopedias, novels, textbooks. She spent her evenings cataloging them, smelling the fresh paper, feeling the spine of each book. It was therapy. Every book was a brick in the wall of her new life. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It had no return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Large, loopy, chaotic. Cindy. Rose sat on the porch, the envelope in her hand. Elena was inside helping Maria with dinner. Rose debated burning it unopened. That would be the strong thing to do, the main character thing to do. But curiosity is a human flaw. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a demand for money. Mom, I'm tired. My feet hurt. I wait tables for 10 hours a day, and I get yelled at for cold coffee. I live in a basement apartment with a roommate who steals my yogurt. I saw Brad on the news. He looked crazy. I don't want to be crazy. I miss the house. I miss the way you used to make potato salad. I know I messed up. I know you hate me. I just wanted to say, I'm scared. Reality is really hard. See, Rose read the letter. She felt a phantom ache in her chest. This was the first honest thing Cindy had said in 10 years. Reality is really hard. Rose went into the house. She found a pen and a piece of stationery. She wrote back, Cindy, reality is hard. It is supposed to be. That is how you know you are awake. I do not hate you. Hate takes too much energy, but I cannot save you. You have to save yourself. Keep waiting tables. Keep your yogurt safe. Learn the value of $1 that you earned with your own sweat. If you can do that for a year, if you can survive reality without an audience, then maybe we can talk. Until then, do not write to me. Rose. She put the letter in an envelope. She didn't put a check inside. She stamped it and walked to the village post box. Dropping the letter into the slot felt like releasing a bird. It might fly, it might fall, but it was no longer in her hand. The night before the grand opening of the Learning Center, a typhoon warning was issued. The village went into lockdown mode. Shutters were closed, chickens were brought inside. The wind began to howl, whipping the mango trees into a frenzy. Rose sat in the main room of Elena's house, listening to the rain hammer against the tin roof. It sounded like 1,000 drums. Will the center hold? Rose asked, staring at the ceiling. Thou built it strong, Elena said, lighting a kerosene lamp as the power flickered and died. Reinforced concrete. It will hold. If it blows down, Rose said, I don't think I have the strength to build it again. You built yourself back up from ashes, Rose, Maria said from her rocking chair. A little wind is nothing. The storm raged for 6 hours. Rose didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, thinking about storms. The storm of her husband's death, the storm of the accident, the storm of the fire. She realized that her whole life had been a series of seeking shelter, hiding in the house, hiding in her marriage, hiding in her role as a mother. I am done hiding, she thought. When the wind finally died down around 4 a.m., Rose grabbed her raincoat and a flashlight. Rose, wait for daylight, Elena called out. I need to see, Rose said. She walked through the muddy path to the village center. The wind was still gusting, blowing wet leaves into her face. She turned the corner. The learning center stood. It was wet, battered, and covered in debris. A branch had fallen on the front steps, but the wall stood firm. The yellow paint shone in the beam of her flashlight. And there, sitting on the front steps, sheltered by the overhang, was a dog. The three-legged village dog. It was shivering, wet, but safe. It had found sanctuary. Rose dropped her flashlight. She started to cry. She stood in the mud, rain mixing with her tears, laughing and sobbing at the same time. She had built a shelter. She had built something that could withstand the storm. For the first time in her life, she had created something that didn't leave her. The sun rose on a washed, clean world. The sky was a brilliant, impossible blue. The village came out to clean up. Men with machetes cleared the fallen branches. Women swept the mud from the plaza. By noon, the Sterling Learning Center was ready. There was no ribbon cutting. There were no speeches by politicians. There was just a feast. Tables were set up in the yard. Roast pig, lechon, rice, mangoes, and pancit noodles. The smell was intoxicating. Children ran everywhere. They didn't care about the architecture. They cared about the books. Rose watched from her wheelchair. She was tired today and she allowed herself the rest. She watched a group of 6-year-olds sitting on the floor of the library, holding a copy of Where the Wild Things Are. Elna sat beside her. Look, Elna pointed. Maria was sitting at the front desk wearing a new dress. She was holding a large book with braille text that Rose had specially ordered. She was running her fingers over the dots, reading a story aloud to 2 rapt teenagers. She looks like a queen, Rose said. This is your legacy, Rose, Elena said. Not the Victorian house. This. It's not my legacy, Rose corrected. It's ours. Then a young boy approached Rose. He was about 7, with scraped knees and big brown eyes. He was holding a book. Excuse me, Lola Rose? He said shyly. Grandma Rose. Rose's heart skipped a beat. Lola. Yes? She smiled. Can you read this to me? My English is not good yet. Rose looked at the book. It was The Giving Tree. She felt a moment of hesitation. That book. The story of a tree that gave everything until it was just a stump. It had been her life. She took the book. She looked at the cover. I will read it to you, Rose said. But then we are going to talk about the ending, because I think the tree should have kept some apples for herself. The boy laughed. Okay, Lola. Rose opened the book. She began to read. Her voice was strong, carrying over the noise of the feast, over the memory of the fire, over the silence of the prison cell. Once there was a tree. As she read, she looked up. She saw Elena smiling at her. She saw Maria nodding to the rhythm of her voice. She saw the open door of the library framing the blue ocean beyond. Rose Sterling took a deep breath. She turned the page. She wasn't a stump, she was a forest. 2 years later, the mango trees had grown taller, their branches heavy with golden fruit. The Sterling Learning Center was no longer a yellow building that smelled of fresh paint. It was lived in. The walls were covered in children's drawings. The floors were scuffed by hundreds of small feet. It smelled of chalk, old paper, and the sea breeze. Rose sat on the veranda, her legs stretched out. She wasn't wearing the orthopedic shoes anymore. She wore simple leather sandals. Her cane leaned against the railing, gathering dust. She was peeling a mango with a small knife, the skin curling away in one long, satisfying ribbon. A black car, an anomaly in this village of tricycles and jeepneys, pulled up the dusty road. Rose didn't flinch. She knew who it was. James Henderson stepped out. He looked comically out of place in his grey wool suit, sweating profusely in the tropical humidity. He carried a leather briefcase that looked like it contained secrets of state. James, Rose called out, slicing a piece of fruit. You're wearing a suit in 90-degree weather. You're a masochist. James wiped his forehead with a handkerchief, walking up the steps. And you, Rose, look remarkably unlike the woman I knew in Connecticut. That woman is dead, James. Have a seat. Have a mango. James sat. He declined the fruit. He placed the briefcase on the table between them. It landed with a heavy thud. It's time for the biennial review, James said, clicking the latches open. The trust. This was the secret. The final twist that Rose had kept hidden from everyone, even Elena. When she sold the land, when she liquidated her assets, the world thought she had taken the money and run. They thought she had left her children to rot. The media had painted her as the runaway granny. But Rose was a teacher. And a teacher never gives up on a student, even the ones who burn down the classroom. How are the accounts? Rose asked calmly. The Learning Center is fully funded for the next 10 years, James said, shuffling papers. Your personal expenses are minimal. You are actually generating interest. And the other accounts? James pulled out 2 separate folders, one red, one blue. Let's start with the red folder, James said. Inmate Nuttate 940, Bradley Sterling. Rose looked at the folder. She didn't touch it. Tell me. He's been in for 2 years now, James said. The first year was difficult. He got into fights. He spent 3 months in solitary. He was angry, Rose. He wrote letters to the appeals court every week, blaming you, blaming me, blaming the fire department. And now? Now James opened the folder. He has engaged with the protocol. The protocol. It was Rose's masterstroke. She hadn't disinherited them. That would have been simple revenge. Instead, she had placed their inheritance into a conditional trust, a redemption trust. For Brad, the terms were specific. He could not access a single dime for legal fees or commissary upgrades. However, the trust would deposit funds into a savings account, accessible only upon his release, for every book he read and reviewed from a list Rose had curated. The list included Crime and Punishment, The Grapes of Wrath, Man's Search for Meaning, and The Kite Runner. Furthermore, he had to write essays, not legal appeals. Essays on specific prompts. What is the value of a dollar? What does it mean to be a man? Who was Arthur Sterling? He submitted an essay last week, James said, on the kite runner. James handed a handwritten sheet of paper to Rose. Rose took it. The handwriting was cramped, angry at first, but smoothing out toward the end. She read the final paragraph. I always thought Baba was hard on Amir because he hated him. Messiah, but reading this, I think he was hard on him because he saw the weakness in him. He wanted him to stand up. I never stood up. I just stood on my wallet. Rose lowered the paper. Her hand trembled slightly. He is reading, Rose whispered. He is. James nodded. He has earned $400 in his trust this month. It's not millions, Rose, but he earned it. Good, Rose said. She placed the paper back in the folder. Keep the account locked. He gets it when he's 46. Now the blue folder, James said. Cindy. Cindy's protocol was different. Cindy suffered from the addiction of attention. Her protocol was a detox program. The trust would match her wages. For every dollar she earned doing honest, non-public facing labor, the trust would put $2 into an investment account. But there was a catch. If she posted on social media, if she uploaded a single selfie, a single tweet, a single check-in, the account would reset to zero. She relapsed twice in the first year, James reported. She posted a Woe is Me video on YouTube. We wiped the account. She lost $6,000. And? She has been dark for 8 months, James said. Not a peep. She's working at a diner in Trenton. She was promoted to shift manager last week. Shift manager, Rose smiled. That means she has to handle the schedule. She has to deal with people calling in sick. Yes, she wrote a letter to the trust administrator. She complained that Gen Z kids have no work ethic. Rose threw her head back and laughed. It was a loud, joyous sound that startled a sleeping dog under the porch. Oh, the irony. Rose wiped her eyes. She sounds like me. She has saved $12,000, Rose. With the match, she has $36,000. She's looking at a small apartment. No roommates. James closed the folders. He looked at Rose with admiration. You didn't just punish them, James said. You're parenting them from 7,000 miles away. I'm not parenting them, James, Rose corrected. I'm simply letting physics do its job. For every action, there is a reaction. I shielded them from that law for 30 years. Now I'm letting gravity work. Do they know? James asked. Do they know it's you? The trust is anonymous. They suspect, Rose said. But they don't know. And they must never know. If they think it's me, they will try to manipulate me. They will cry, they will beg. If they think it's a faceless institution, they will respect the rules. You're a terrifying woman, Rose Sterling. I am a mother, James. It's the same thing. Later that afternoon, James left to catch his flight back to the chilly reality of Connecticut. Rose walked him to the car. Will you ever come back? James asked, hand on the door handle. The house is gone, but there are condos. You could live comfortably. Rose looked around. She saw Elena teaching a group of girls how to weave baskets. She saw Maria sleeping in the shade. She saw the ocean vast and indifferent. James, Rose said, do you see that tree? She pointed to a narrow tree, its roots deep and gnarled, digging into the earth. If you dig up an old tree to move it to a nicer pot, you kill it. My roots are here now. But your children... My children are currently in the middle of their most important lesson, Rose said. If I go back, I interrupt the class. And a good teacher never interrupts a breakthrough. James nodded. He got in the car. Goodbye, Rose. Goodbye, James. Send me the essays, but don't send the replies. The sun began to dip lower. The golden hour. The light that made everything look like a memory before it even happened. Rose walked down to the beach. Eleanor was there, collecting shells with the school children. Lola Rose! The kids shouted, running over to her. They swarmed her like little birds. Lola, look! A purple shell. Lola, can we read the story about the giant peach again? Rose smiled, patting their heads. Tomorrow. Tonight we watch the sun. Eleanor walked over. She looked at Rose. She noticed the lightness in Rose's shoulders. The lawyer brought bad news? Eleanor asked. No, Rose said. He brought the grades. And? They are passing, Rose said. Barely, but passing. Eleanor didn't ask for details. She knew enough. She knew that Rose had built a ghost machine to save her family. A machine that ran on silence and tough love. I have a surprise for you, Eleanor said. I hate surprises, Rose joked. The last surprise I got was a fire. This is a good one, Eleanor signaled to the beach path. Walking toward them was a young woman. She was Filipina, dressed in a nurse's uniform. She looked shy. This is Joy, Eleanor said. My cousin. Hello, Joy, Rose said. Joy just graduated from nursing school, Eleanor said, beaming. Thanks to the scholarship from the center. Joy stepped forward. She took Rose's hand and pressed it to her forehead, the same gesture Maria had used years ago. Thank you, Ma'am Rose, Joy said. Because of you, I can help my village. I am the first nurse in my family. Rose looked at this young woman. She saw the hope in her eyes. She saw the future. This was the return on investment. This was the compound interest of kindness. You don't have to thank me, Joy, Rose said. Just be a good nurse. Listen to your patients, even the old ones who complain about the tea. I will, Joy promised. Night fell. The stars came out, thick and bright, unpolluted by city lights. Rose sat on her porch. The village was quiet. The crickets were singing their rhythmic song. She took out her iPad. She opened the folder James had emailed her. She opened the file, Cindy Journal, month 8.pdf. Part of Cindy's protocol was to keep a private journal. James scanned it during the audit. Rose began to read. Tuesday. It rained today. A customer left his umbrella. I ran 3 blocks to give it back to him. He didn't tip me. He just said thanks. Old Cindy would have been furious. She would have tweeted about the audacity and tried to get him fired. New Cindy just walked back to the diner. I got wet. My hair was a mess. But it felt good. I don't know why I helped someone and nobody saw it. Does it still count if nobody sees it? I think it counts more. Rose lowered the iPad. A profound sense of peace washed over her. It counts more. She had done it. She had broken the curse. It had cost her a house, a hip, and her presence in their lives. But she had broken the curse of narcissism. She looked up at the moon. Arthur, she whispered to the night sky, you always gave them what they wanted. I gave them what they needed. I hope you're not mad. She imagined Arthur's ghost, not in the burning house, but sitting in the rocking chair next to her. She imagined him smiling. Rose closed the iPad. She wasn't waiting for them to come to the Philippines. Maybe they never would. Maybe Brad would get out of prison and never speak to her again. Maybe Cindy would take her savings and disappear. It didn't matter. She wasn't the keeper of their stories anymore. She was just the editor of the prologue. The rest of the book was theirs to write. She stood up. Her hip gave a small twinge, a reminder of the fall. But it was just a sensation, not a sentence. She walked inside the small bamboo house. On the wall, framed in simple wood, was the watercolor painting of the bird. The one she had painted in the apartment when she was hiding. She looked at the bird. It wasn't flying away anymore. It was just flying. Rose turned off the lamp. She lay down on the bed, listening to the ocean breathing against the shore. In and out. In and out. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in 66 years, Rose Sterling fell asleep without worrying about tomorrow. Because tomorrow was already built and it was strong.